Please welcome Ivan Zhao.
Good morning, and welcome to Make with Notion. This is our very first in-person conference as a company. There's a lot to share, a lot to demo, and a lot to celebrate today. So let's get started. Speaking of celebration, I just got married last month. And the wedding planning process finally gave me the opportunity to convince my wife to try Notion databases. Like this wedding registry we built, which we publish through Notion sites. But more importantly, the wedding itself was a magical experience. It brought together so many dear people to the same place at the same time. And today, and this week, it feels the same to me, but for our Notion community. You know, we counted last night. There are people from 45 different countries in attendance today. Wow. That's a quarter of the United Nations right here. Right? So thank you for traveling to San Francisco and to watch this keynote online, to be with us here today. We're very grateful. Notion started 10 years ago in this very city, San Francisco. Here's a photo of us back then in our very first office. My hair's longer now. My team told me I had a pretty good glow up. You know, at the time, Notion was just an idea. No, we did not have a product, definitely don't have a business model, but we had this hunch that software should be creative and software should be more beautiful. This is our first prototype. You can see that there's some hints of the Notion editor today. There's drag and drop, and there are the blocks on the left. In the past 10 years, we worked really hard on this idea. And you know, we finally shipped charts this year. So, good thing takes time. Thank you for your patience. And in the past year, we have grown a lot. Right before COVID, we crossed 1 million users globally. And last quarter, we passed 100 million users. It's a huge milestone. But it's never just about the numbers. Never about the numbers. What I'm most proud of is always the people. And you all know this, right? Today, Notion has some of the most passionate communities around the world. From Brazil, thank you, to Japan, to Nigeria, and this from Dublin last month. Okay, and this is from Dublin last month. Yeah. In so many ways, Notion no longer belongs to us, but it belongs to you. You shape it. You make Notion your own. That's why on our billboard, we have this tagline, think it, make it. And that's why we make this very conference Make with Notion, because we want you to make Notion your own. I'll share a couple of my favorite examples from our community and how people are making Notion their own. Earlier this month, these two gentlemen visited our office, and they told us they're from Thailand, and they're part of monastery, and they run everything on Notion. Right? From their meditation schedule, to manage their chores, to publish their writings online with Notion sites. Notion is everything, the everything tool for them. So if you have told me years ago that one day Notion will help monks run a monastery in Thailand using AI, I would think, oh, you're crazy. Here's another example. We all know Toyota is the #1 car manufacturer in the world, right, by volume and sales. And they're known for their durable quality thanks to the production method they invented back then called Kanban. And today, Toyota is a Notion customer. And they store their knowledge base on Notion, and their research team use Notion Kanban board to manage the project. So we're pretty proud to provide Kanban boards to the inventor of Kanban. So not too shabby. Of course, Notion is not just for monks, not just for enterprise customers like Toyota. Today, we power many of the fastest growing companies in tech and AI, like Figma and OpenAI. We also love that so many founders trust Notion and start their companies on Notion, like nearly half the Y Combinator companies. And this is my favorite. In the past year, some creators in our community are now making over $1 million a year each selling Notion templates or doing Notion consultancy. It's truly a testament of our product and of our community here. But in our heart, Notion really hasn't changed. This is our first investor pitch deck. And on the cover, I borrowed a quote from Marshall McLuhan. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. It's still our point of view today. We draw our inspiration from pioneers of our field. Back in the 1970s, these computing pioneers imagined a world where software can augment human intellect, where people can modify the tool, modify the software they use, just like bicycle for our minds. I still remember during college reading papers published by those computing pioneers and feeling their sense of optimism and empowerment. I still believe then, I still believe now. This is the most important thing I can work on as a software programmer, is to give other people the creative freedom to shape their own tools. But somewhere along the way, as computers become more commonplace in the 80s and 90s, the world forgot the vision from those computing pioneers. Software become more rigid, something that only programmers can modify. And as software moved on to the cloud in the past 15 years, things got worse. There are even more tools, more silos, more rigidity, and sprawling. So today, if you're an average company, you have to use more than 88 tools to run your business. It's hard to find anything. Your team wastes so much time context switching, right? And the cost from those tools add up quickly. And with more AI tools coming onto the market, it's getting even more confusing and more expensive. And Notion, this is exactly the problem we want to solve. And we take it very personally. Because we believe software should be creative. Software should be beautiful. Software should be soft, malleable, and adaptable to how you think, not the other way around. So how do we solve this problem of the software sprawling problem for you all today? Well, our insight lies in our favorite toy growing up, Legos. No? Raise your hand if you played Legos growing up. Wow, okay. So you all know what they are. Our insight is most software is made from the same common building blocks. Now, they all have text editing. They all have database. They all have views, have a charts automation. So why don't we just deconstruct software back to those common building blocks, make them as friendly as Legos, so our end users can build whatever tools they want without needing to code. Because our end users tend to be the domain expert, they usually can create better tools than we can. And Lego did exactly this in the toy industry. On one end, Lego can be your toy cards. And on the other end, Legos can be your Barbie dolls. All share the same bricks. And because they all share the same bricks, they're all connected by default. No silos. And they can grow with you and offer great value for your money. But most importantly, Legos are creative. Legos are beautiful because they are yours. You make them your own. They can be as unique as your personality, as complex as your business needs. And when your tools are tailor-made and all connect in one place, they will help you move faster, think better, and unlock your potential for whatever you do. So, I hope this gives you a sense of our mission at Notion and why we exist as a company. Because we want to help you to build beautiful tools for your life's work. We want the world to know that Notion is first and foremost for people who build, for people who care, for the entrepreneurs and the leaders who want to make changes in their organizations, and for creators like you in the audience today. So with this frame of mind, let me introduce my co-founder Akshay to talk about the new building blocks we're launching today. Here's Akshay.
Thank you, Ivan. And so wonderful to be here with all of you today. Thank you. I'm Akshay Kothari, and I have the honor of supporting our product teams here at Notion. We have some really exciting new things to share with you today. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about and what we're going to be releasing today is very much inspired by your feedback and your requests. So thank you for all of that. We're going to be covering these three areas in product. We're going to be releasing brand new building blocks that you get to play with. We'll introduce new workflows that you get to build with these blocks. And then finally, we'll introduce new ways to share your creations with the rest of the world. And to make things exciting, we're going to walk through all of these through live demos. But let me set the stage with a problem that we are facing as a company today. Notion today is 800 people across 7 different offices around the world. And every month, we have some new employees who join us. And as is normal, these new folks have simple questions. Someone is having a Wi-Fi issue. Someone needs an urgent legal review of a contract. Or someone just has a simple question of benefits. So like every other company, what we did is we spun up a bunch of Slack channels. We asked people to ask questions. And they do, as you can see from this screenshot. But if I'm being honest, it feels a bit chaotic. It feels very unorganized. So what we're going to do today is on stage here with all of you, we're going to use our building blocks, and we're going to create a Notino help desk. That is not a typo. Notino is what we use as a word for Notion employees. And we're going to use Notion to build a help desk so that Notinos can ask questions, and the teams that get these questions can see it in an organized way. Sounds fun? All right. So to build this help desk, we are currently, today's Notion is missing a fundamental building block. Any guesses what that might be? It's been in the making for so long, and I'm so excited to share that we're launching Forms today. And to tell you more, here's Sachi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sachi, and I'm on the Forms team. We've been hard at work these last few months, and I'm so excited to share more about what we're launching today. Notion is already a great place to organize your information and share it with others, but there's a pretty important piece of this workflow that's been missing. And that's collecting information, which is pretty manual and tedious in Notion today. Many other apps and workarounds have sprung up to fill this need, everything from third-party form integrations and CSV exports, to some people resorting to just manually copying and pasting their data in order to get it into Notion. So we set out to build a better experience with forms, one that makes it super easy to create and share a form to collect the information that you need. And then, when you have that information in Notion, you can filter, sort, analyze, and take action on it all from one place. Here are a few examples of what you might use forms in Notion for. At work, forms are a great way to standardize requests for your internal teams, like this social request form made by our social media team. Or for your next project, you can send out a form to collect user feedback and then take action on it right from a Notion database. Say you're having a Halloween party. You could already plan your event in Notion. Now you can even send out a form to collect RSVPs. Don't ghost your friends. Let's take a deeper dive and check out forms together. Like Akshay introduced, today we're going to be building Notion's brand new help desk where employees can receive support. Something a bit more organized than just shouting into the Slack void and hoping that you get a response. Our help desk is going to use a form to submit tickets, which can then be triaged by our internal teams. I've already taken a first pass at creating our form, but let's add some final touches together. Here's where we can modify our questions. We support question types like text, multiple choice, images, but if you're adding a form to an existing database, it'll automatically suggest questions based on your database's properties. Let's add a question for what office an employee is working from. And we can see that all of the options get pre-populated right from that property, and these are actually all of Notion's offices worldwide. You can also click on a question in order to customize it. For this first "what do you need help with" question, I'll make this required so that people have to answer this before they're able to submit the form. The rest of my questions look pretty good. We ask about how urgent their request is. We give them space to upload any attachments. But then for our final notes question, I can add a helpful description and provide support for longer answers here. Currently, our help desk form is only shared internally with members of this workspace, which works perfectly for this use case. If I wanted to, though, I could actually publish this to the web so that anyone in the world was able to submit. I can also preview what my form is going to look like for those submitting, and that looks pretty good. You can see that we're automatically collecting who is submitting our form here, which also works great for our help desk. If I needed to, though, I could also make the form anonymous. This looks pretty good, so I think we can share it out. Once we share out our form and we start receiving submissions, you can see all of the tickets that are getting created right here in this database itself. So employees have already been submitting a bunch of tickets. Some of them, facilities is going to look at, IT, HR. It looks like we had this pretty unfortunate ticket that just got created by Larry. It seems like their dog used their laptop as a chew toy. Oh, I think we have a picture. Oh. Hopefully we can get this resolved for Larry today. This seems kind of urgent. Here we have the full power of Notion databases. I can filter down my data. I can set up an automation to receive a notification when someone creates a new ticket. And I can visualize my data with a chart. So I just created this super basic chart to see the spread of tickets across all of our internal teams. But the possibilities here are pretty endless. So that's our help desk. And it's all made possible by forms. I'm super excited to see what you all do with forms next. They're fully integrated with the rest of Notion, which means your workflows require one fewer tool. They're super easy to build and easy to share. I do think our help desk could be a little bit more beautiful and maybe more customized for our use case, and I think Tyler can help us with that. Here he is to tell you more.
Hey everyone, I'm Tyler from the design team, and I'm super excited to share with you something we've been working on this year: layouts. With layouts, you can take customization to a new level in Notion. We think that it's going to be able to give you so many more opportunities to use Notion for whatever different use case you have. Now, here's an example from one of our internal task databases. This is a task page that started off just by tracking a few properties, but, and I'm sure this has happened to a lot of you, things got a little overwhelming. Here's another example from my personal Notion. This is a recipe from a cookbook database I use to organize all of my recipes. Recently, I've been using AI properties to estimate prep time, baking time, and even generate a grocery list for me automatically. It's been working pretty well, but there are some things I wish I could change, like being able to see these photos in a bit greater detail. Now, there's better ways to present all this information, but the tricky part is tasks and recipes are very different things. And there's no one-size-fits-all layout that's going to work equally well for both of these and the thousands of other use cases. So to solve this, we're going to give you the ability to customize your page layouts to however you want, any way that you use Notion. Let's see how that could work for these two examples. So for my recipe page, maybe I care most about that prep time and baking time and the actual recipe instructions that are pushed off the page here. So I can transform my layout to accommodate this use case. Oh, let's see if it works here. There we go. So now I have those properties pinned under the page title, and everything else I've moved to the side of the page. I've made those photos nice and big so I can get that babka braid just right. Now let's look at that engineering task example. Here I might want to transform it a little bit of a different way. So I care most about that status, assignee, due date, and those icons that need to be updated. Everything else I've organized into groups, one for tracking, one for QA, and one for the edit history of the task. Now, it only takes a couple of minutes for you to customize your pages just like this. Let me show you how it works. All right, so we're back in that Otino help desk example that Sachi shared earlier. And we can click into any of these pages and see kind of the default layout that we're working with here. As you can see, there's a lot of properties to contend with, some that were submitted via Sachi's form, as well as some additional ones we use to track things internally. Now, let's see if we can customize this layout to better solve for our use case. Now, when you hover over a page title, you'll see this new button that says Customize Layout. And when I click it, I'm brought into this new Layout Builder interface. So any changes I make here to the page layout will apply not just to this page, but all of the pages in the database at the same time. So if I select this heading module here, on the right, I can configure how it looks and what I want to focus on. So in a help desk ticket example, I care most about maybe who submitted this, maybe when they need it by, how urgent it is, and what the status of that ticket is. So now I've pinned those 4 properties under the page title. The rest of the properties aren't quite as important to me, so I'm going to drag them over to the right side of the page. And now I have some space on the page to focus on what I do care about. If I click this plus button here, now you can see additional elements I can add to this page. You can create a new property. Here are some of the ones we focused on for launch, but you can expect more to come soon. Or you can highlight an existing property. In this case, I'm going to highlight the attachments and notes that were submitted via that form. So there are those attachments and those notes, and now I have a much better idea of what went wrong here. Now, I still have a lot of properties here. I think it'd be nice if you could organize them a little bit. So I'm going to create a new section for the less important properties that we really only use for auditing purposes, and call that paper trail. And I'll create another one that's for triage. And so now I can just drag and drop those properties into those appropriate sections, and you'll see them reflected on the page. Okay, so this is looking pretty close to how I want it. We've also given you some visual preferences, like how you want your comments to appear, as well as whether or not you want to include those property icons. I'm going to toggle them off because I think it makes my layout look a little bit cleaner. And now I'm ready to apply this to all the pages in my database. And here's that customized layout. We have those properties pinned under the title, the attachments and notes that I chose to focus on, as well as everything else in this collapsible sidebar on the right. Now, there's one last thing I want to do that I think you guys are really going to like in the spirit of customization. We all know how to add an icon to our Notion pages. Of course, you can choose from any of the emoji we have here. But you'll notice something new in our emoji picker, and that's these little category tabs on the bottom. The last tab here is for custom emoji, which a lot of them to load here. So we've made it super easy for you to upload and share custom emoji with everyone in your workspace. I'm going to choose one that I made previously here, which is the culprit in question, Miles. And of course, you can use them not just in your page icons, but also anywhere you type. So if I type in Miles, I get him here, right? And you can use them in your comments, in your buttons like this one. And so we hope you really have some fun with it. All right. So that's layouts. We hope you really use it to unlock your creativity in Notion, to help make your pages more organized and more beautiful. We can't wait to see what you come up with. To share some more, I'll pass it off to Akshay.
All right.
That's it.
Give it up for Tyler and Sachi. So we've been working on forms and layouts and custom emojis for such a long time that we had to ask ourselves, how do we price these? So we looked at a bunch of products in the market. There's a lot of forms products out there that let you build a form, but soon you hit the rate limits. So here's what we decided. Unlimited forms, unlimited layouts, and it's free for everyone. We can't wait to see what you build with it. And we will continue to invest in both of these areas. The one thing that I'm really excited about is the team is already starting to build conditional logic in forms. Sounds like we should be building that. And please continue to share the feedback. These products will be rolling out today to all of you, and that will help shape the future of these products. Okay, so we're going to go back to Legos for a second. My wife and I have 2 young kids, so as you can imagine, my home is filled with Legos. In fact, here's a photo of my 3-year-old son, Raghav. He's obsessed with Duplos. Whereas my daughter, who's a few years older, she's graduated to some pretty cool Lego sets, like this one. She built this botanical garden all by herself, just by following the booklet that came with it. And as a parent, it's really fun to see that even after she's finished building this garden, the play continues. She really puts the creations to work. So like the little minifigures are coming out, they're hanging out. One minifigure goes up to the flower pot and is watering the garden. You can actually see one of them here hanging out in the porch, enjoying a drink. Software is similar. We just used Notion's new building blocks to create a help desk. But how will it be used inside a company? How do we make sure that every question that people are asking is getting answered on time? And most importantly, how do we make sure that the repetitive questions that are coming in can be answered in a way that we can really save time? This is where new workflows come in. Workflows help you work faster and smarter. And we have a couple new powerful workflows that we'd love to show you today, starting with automations. And for that, let me invite Manny on stage.
Thanks, Akshay. Hey everyone, I'm Manny. I'm on the automations team, and I'm so excited to show you what we've been building the past few months. Automations are like a superpower. They make everything faster and let you focus on the things that matter most, like building and creativity. So we've been adding more automation capabilities right inside Notion. And how do automations work in Notion? Well, all you have to do is set a trigger and an action that you want to take. Simply put, when this happens, do that. And to start building automations, all you have to do is click the little lightning bolt icon at the top of any of your databases. Automations have been in Notion for a while, but we've only scratched the surface of what you can do with them. And today, I'm excited to announce that we're shipping your 2 top requested automation features, Gmail notifications and formulas. These new actions are really flexible and powerful. Here's a few examples of what you can automate with these new capabilities. First, you could send an email follow-up as soon as a project is marked ready for review to get eyes on it as quickly as possible. Or if you want to perform more granular actions and automations, you can use formulas to keep all parts of your project and goal tracking up to date. For example, when a project status changes to delayed, then also update the associated goal and mark it as at risk. And when you combine Gmail and formulas, it gets even more powerful. Let me show you how it works. All right, so we're back in the help desk database. Although we already have a form to collect the responses and an AI property to automatically categorize them, there's still a few manual steps left in the process when you're responsible for closing them out. We can see the ticket for Larry's sad laptop at the top of our queue, so let's make sure this gets assigned to the right person with an automation. To add an automation, just click the lightning bolt icon at the top of your database. As you can see, we already have some automations created, so let's start with this one that automatically assigns tickets to the right person. In the help desk database, there are a few teams that are responsible for managing the queue. This automation uses a formula to identify who's currently on call, and then will automatically assign any tickets that are set to do to that individual. And if you're interested in learning how to build powerful formulas like this, we have a bunch of helpful resources at notion.com/help, and we also have many templates already available for you with automations pre-built in. And just to show the flexibility that formulas enable, we can take this one step further and use formulas and buttons to automatically escalate any ticket that's critical to the team's manager. Now, this ticket seems urgent since Larry isn't able to get any work done with his laptop. So let's escalate it to make sure it gets resolved ASAP. And finally, let's make sure that Larry is notified as soon as the ticket's resolved so he can get his replacement laptop. We can do that with another automation. Now, this workflow sends an automated email as soon as the ticket's status property is set to complete. With the new email action, you can send emails using your connected Gmail account. The subject and body of the email are both very customizable, and you can even use the @mention key to quickly reference things like the database properties, other Notion pages or people, or even dynamic variables, like the date the automation was triggered. For this email, we'll reference both the name of the ticket as well as the date the ticket was resolved. And now, when this ticket or any other ticket's resolved, the user that submitted the issue will receive an automated email letting them know about it. And that's automations. Rather than rely on third-party automation tools, we've been gradually bringing more of them into Notion to save you more time and allow you to focus on the things that matter most. But there's another workflow that can give us even more building superpowers, and here's Lauren to tell you more about it.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lauren, and I work on the AI team here at Notion. A few weeks ago, we reintroduced Notion AI. You might have noticed its inquisitive little face in the bottom corner of your screen, winking at you. We built Notion AI to be an all-in-one tool. There are already so many AI tools out there. You got your chatbots, your search engines, your writing assistants. So we aim to ambitiously build one tool that can do it all. Chat, search, analyze, and write. So let me highlight some of my new favorite features. Notion isn't the only tool that you use for work. So we expanded Notion AI's capabilities to search across connected apps like Slack and Google Drive, with GitHub and Jira coming soon. We gave Notion AI some eyes. Now, Notion AI can analyze your attachments. Turn your chaotic whiteboarding session into organized and structured meeting notes. And of course, Notion AI can still generate text for you. But unlike generic AI writing tools, we know you exist in the context of all in which you work and what came before you. So you can reference other pages in your prompts to get more helpful and tailored outputs. So let me show you how we can use Notion AI to help resolve some of our help desk tickets. Okay. We are back in the Notino help desk. Before I even get started, I do want to highlight that we're already using AI to help triage. You'll notice we have this team property, which is an AI autofill property. And what that just means is that when a new ticket comes in, AI is analyzing the context of the ticket, and it's assigning which team it thinks it should be best routed to. So in this case, I'm going to help out the IT team today with this "my dog used my laptop as a chew toy" ticket. So let's take a look. Internet's a little slow. Okay, unfortunately, this laptop did take some damage, But I mean, look at this little guy. Who can blame him? One of my first questions I have if I'm trying to resolve this ticket is, do our benefits include a pet insurance policy? Like, do we have any insurance to help cover this laptop replacement? So I asked AI, do our benefits include a pet insurance policy? And what it did is it searched our workspace, and it gave us an answer. I can even click on this little citation here, which even navigates us right to the exact block that it got that answer from. So in this case, we do have one, and there's even a PDF here, which has a bit more details. If I were to open up that PDF, we'd know that it's about 4 pages long. It's a little dense, and I'm not 100% sure if this is exactly what I need to help resolve this ticket. So what I can do is I can click on this Ask AI button, and that's going to automatically upload the PDF to chat. And then I'm going to go ahead and ask, will the damage described in this ticket be covered by our policy? What AI is doing right now is it's reading the ticket behind the chat, it's reading our PDF, and it's giving me an answer. In this case, yes, there's a maximum coverage, and it even gives me instructions on how we can resolve this. And so in this case, to file a claim, Larry should do this. So I'm going to go ahead and help Larry. I'm going to file the claim. I'm going to get his laptop replacement right away. And we're going to go ahead and assume we're going to mark this as complete, which is going to fire off Manny's automation, which will let Larry know this has been resolved. I'm going to take it one step further, which is, as much as we love this little guy and his passion for technology, maybe there's a better place where he can do his life's work. I'm going to just ask into the void, what dog daycares do people recommend? So AI is going to go ahead, it's going to search our workspace, but you'll notice that the citation here looks slightly different. And that's because it's actually a Slack citation. So in this case, Notion searched not only our workspace, it also searched our connected apps like Slack, and it decided that this was the best answer. So I have these recommendations. I could copy these answers to my clipboard. I could also attempt to share it, and in this case what I'll do, I can copy that image of this answer to my clipboard. But I think I want to do one more step forward here, which is that I think this could be helpful for not just Larry, but other Neutinos in my workspace. So I'm going to have it draft a document for me, which AI can do. It can write a document, and it just put all those recommendations in one doc for me. This is a pretty good first draft. I'm going to go ahead and save it to our docs database. But I have one more trick up my sleeve, which is that this doesn't look very enticing. I'm going to go ahead and select all this text, I'm going to open AI, and use one of my favorited prompts, which is update this doc based on our internal comms guide. Our internal comms guide, if it all goes well, I want color, I want emojis, and I want tables. It's doing a great job. It's doing a great job. Very good AI. Good job. So this looks good. I feel more comfortable sharing this version with my teammates. And that's Notion AI. So let's talk about what's next. Yeah, you can clap. Okay. We're constantly improving Notion AI to make it smarter and faster. And we know that it's not so great right now at answering questions at your database, which we are working to improve. So it'll be better at answering questions about your database and helping you file tasks more automatically. And of course, we're going to be adding those new connectors like GitHub and Jira. And we'll keep adding more, so please do let us know which apps you want to search with. And that's Notion AI. It can chat, search, analyze, and write all in one. And there's a lot more to explore, so if you want to see more, please join us on stage 2 later today. So that's all for me. Back to you, Akshay.
Nice work. Give it up for Lauren and Manny. So automations and AI are both available today, and we can't wait to see what you build with it. And for both of these, we will continue to invest in these areas. So besides what Lauren just shared, the one that I'm super excited about is that we're going to soon support, automations will soon support custom web requests with partners like Zapier. So stay tuned for that. Some takers for that. That's good. So here we are. Just in a few minutes, with a few demos, we were able to build this incredible Neutino help desk. We can now use forms to collect questions. We can organize our tasks with custom layouts. We can update status on these tasks with automations. And finally, we can use Notion AI as our perfect memory for every query. And if you zoom out a bit, all the building blocks that we use to build this help desk are the same building blocks that you can use to build any workflow for your life or for your work. In fact, you can use Notion to build practically anything. But the one thing that I'm super excited about is that you don't have to start from scratch anymore. You have thousands of templates built by the Notion community, all of you, that you can choose from, that you can start with. And to tell you more about this incredible community of creators and what they're building, here's Erica.
Okay, thank you, Akshay. Hi, everyone. I am Erica Anderson, and I support our global go-to-market teams here at Notion. Part of what I love about my job is that I get to spend time every day with our customers and see the amazing things that you use Notion for. And today, we're excited to bring you a place where everyone can share what they've built. A place that we hope feels a little like the Lego store. A place where you can get inspired by what's possible with all of these building blocks. Now today, Notion's Lego store is the template gallery. It's a one-stop shop where you can browse thousands of templates and with one easy click, add them to your workspace. And these templates are being duplicated almost 3 million times per month. That's triple what this number was at the same time last year. What a massive opportunity for creators. And I'm always blown away by the diversity of templates that you think to create. Everything from a business hub where you can track every facet of your creative studio's business, like this one created by Notably Studio, to handbooks for employees like Figma's Fig Manual, or even this book tracker created by Jason Chin, or you may know as Islo. Islo, at 22 years old, has made hundreds of thousands of dollars selling templates just like this one. But there are a few things missing from the template gallery to truly run your business, which means many creators have had to resort to other platforms like Etsy. Now, don't get me wrong, Etsy is great for many things. I recently bought a pair of bell bottoms for my Halloween costume on Etsy. But that told us that the template gallery wasn't truly solving for all of your needs. We know running a business isn't easy. You need to collect payments, you need to provision access, you want to see how many times a template's being used, the analytics. We want to make it easier. So today, I'm incredibly excited to introduce the next evolution of our template gallery, and we call it Marketplace. Marketplace offers a whole new set of tools to help you share templates, make money, start that side hustle, or run a full-time business. And there's no one better to show you a little bit more about Marketplace than Sam Catania. He went from a template builder as a student to an intern to a full-time team member here at Notion. So take it away, Sam.
Thanks, Erica. When I started using Notion, I remember exploring the template gallery to see everything it could offer. I learned about Notion through templates, and eventually I created my first template that you see here. I was working at a student newspaper at the time, that's me, and we needed to solve our problem of managing thousands of stories from pitch to publication. I created a system in Notion that did exactly that, and shared it with editors of other student newspapers all across the country. And I think that ultimately, this is what templates are all about. You know the problems you're trying to solve best, better than anyone else. And with Notion, you can create a system, a template, that solves that problem, and share it with people all around the world to help them solve theirs. So I'm excited to share more about Marketplace today, starting with payments. As a template creator, you'll now be able to collect trusted payments directly through Notion. And You'll be able to collect email addresses from your customers, making it easy to build and form a relationship. And your customers can leave ratings and reviews on your templates. There are a lot of templates in the template gallery, and we think this will help the best ones rise to the top. For our creators, especially those crafting more advanced templates, we understand that protecting your work is critical. With Marketplace, you'll now have the ability to prevent unauthorized redistribution of your templates. And that means while buyers can use the templates freely, if they attempt to share them with others, those people will be redirected back to your listing to purchase it from you, supporting your business. Thank you. We're also implementing a fair refund policy. Everyone can get their money back within 2 weeks, but unlike today, the template will be removed from a workspace after a refund, and we think this experience will be a lot more fair for everyone involved. Yeah, thank you. And finally, as you grow your business on Marketplace, you'll get access to detailed analytics to help you understand what's resonating most with your customers. All of this is coming with a fresh, redesigned look. It's easy to find what you're looking for, whether that's for work, life, or school at notion.com/templates, or right in the sidebar of your workspace. You'll also find this new Blocks on the Block template collection, where you can try out all of the new features we've talked about today. That's forms, layouts, automations, and AI. And of course, you'll find the help desk that we built today, too. Thank you, and back to Erica.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Now, Marketplace was included in Ivan's original Notion pitch deck almost a decade ago. We originally told investors it would be ready in 1 year, but as we all know, good things take time. So we're so excited to finally realize this vision and to see all the incredible ways that it fosters and supports your growing businesses. One of our primary goals when we set out to create Marketplace was to have the most trustworthy platform to do business and to reach the widest audience possible. In that spirit, we're excited to announce that creators will keep 90% of the revenue that they sell through our platform. Marketplace is available in over 100 countries, and you can apply to sell starting today. Anyone can become a creator on the Marketplace, and we cannot wait to see what you create. We gave a few folks a sneak peek of Marketplace and the other features we introduced today earlier, and we're going to see what they had to say.
Notion is just a beautiful tool.
Every minute that I spend in Notion, reduces friction elsewhere.
It's just freaking awesome. It's fast, intuitive.
It's been a game changer for me.
Everything was able to be done in one tool. That's something that didn't exist before, and I was hooked from that point on.
It just has so many possibilities.
I have needed forms for such a long time.
With layouts, I think it's going to be tailored to my own needs.
With formula automations, when I first tried it out, I was giddy.
I need to share with people what I've experienced with Notion AI, because I think it'll really blow people's minds.
If you like sharing your work, well, Marketplace is a great place to start because everything is done for you.
I love that it works for you, not the other way around.
Quite frankly, if someone says, I'm not going to use Notion for your project, I'm saying, okay, then we're not going to work together.
What amazing demos. Today's release is the biggest in Notion history. I'm really proud of our teams. They worked really, really hard on this. And some of them are in the audience today. So, with new building blocks like forms and layout, new workflow like automation and AI, and a brand new Marketplace, we really believe Notion is the best solution out there to tame the software sprawl you're all feeling today. But don't take just our word for it. Forbes calling Notion the AI everything tool. Companies like Affirm, Toyota, and Remote.com use Notion to consolidate tools, save money, and save time. But this is my personal favorite. With Notion templates, now Notion Marketplace, creators like Chloe can change her career path and make a living on Notion. Example like this is exactly why we exist as a company. Because it shows that if we just give people the right building blocks, the right tools, way more people can participate in the software economy without being programmers. And this truly warms our hearts. Now, I want to talk about one feature we're not shipping today, but I know has been a top request for so many of you. That is offline mode. Just to be clear, we're not shipping offline mode today. But I do want to take the time to acknowledge that so many of you want this. I want this myself. No? Whenever I got on the airplane, when Wi-Fi got spotty like here today, I do not want to think about Apple Notes. No, it's sacrilege. And I'm sorry that we could have been more transparent about our progress here. But the good news is we are making progress. We now have a couple teams working on Notion's offline mode. It takes some time to build because given how unique our data model is. In fact, one of our engineers even co-authored a PhD paper on this, on how to get Notion's block-based editor work offline. She finished her paper, so. So I want you to know that we're on it, and expect to see some visible progress in 2025, including a community alpha program to get your feedback. Thank you. Yeah. And for the meanwhile, I want to thank you again for your patience, and we will not let you down. Okay, that's a lot for Make with Notion 2024, and I hope you like what you saw this morning. But before I let you go, we have one more thing here for you today. There are 1 billion knowledge workers in the world, and they use all kinds of softwares for work, for life. However, there are only a few categories of tools that are essential to all 1 billion of us. We're lucky that Notion falls into those categories of tools. Documents, notes, databases of tasks and projects that pretty much can be useful for everyone. And our mission is to bring beauty and creativity to those tools. Earlier this year, we applied the same thinking to another essential tool that 1 billion people rely on. That is calendar. Time is our most precious resource. And the calendar is one of the most frequently used tools for so many of us. And yet it hasn't changed in such a long time. So we launched the beautifully crafted calendar, seamlessly integrate with the rest of your Notion workspace. And in just 10 months, millions of people are using Notion Calendar as their daily driver. So now you're thinking, what's next? Well, right next to the calendar, there's another tool that's essentially for 1 billion people. A tool that so many of us live inside hours a day. It's how we communicate for work and for life. And it has become our identity for the internet. Right? And guess what? It hasn't changed for 20 years. It's not beautiful. It's definitely not creative. Definitely not creative. No. And that is email. So today, I'm proud to introduce the newest Notion product, Notion Mail. And to learn more, here's Andrew and Jason.
I'm Jason. I'm Andrew. And we are so excited to introduce you to Notion Mail. Everyone uses email. In fact, I know everyone here definitely uses email because you needed to register for this event. In many ways, email is our passport to the rest of the internet. It is how we log in and sign up for pretty much every website and service online. It's also how we communicate. The same way you might share your phone number, you share your email address so anyone can contact you. But, and I don't think this is too controversial to say, nobody likes using email. It's overwhelming. You're inundated with information, and it just never ends. I think a big reason for this is for the past 20 years, we've been stuck with a one-size-fits-all approach for the inbox. Doesn't matter who you are, what your job is, or what type of work you're trying to do. It's the same never-ending list of emails. And because of that, so many tools are built on top of email, not within it. So even if you're a small startup, you have to use so many external apps to manage your sales, support, and recruiting. But what if we could get more out of our inbox? What if we could break email down to its fundamental Lego blocks? Make it more flexible. Make it more like Notion. What if your inbox worked like a database, where you can customize the groups, properties, and layouts for each of your flows? And what if writing an email was not as much of a chore as it was like writing a Notion page, where you could use all the blocks you know and love to craft beautiful emails? And use new blocks like a schedule button, which connects with Notion Calendar and takes into account what you've written to suggest the best times to meet. And what if Notion AI not only helped you write emails, but could spare you the tedious back and forth on your longest email threads? And I think most meaningfully, what if Notion AI could manage and organize your inbox for you? So you never need to manually triage or label an email ever again. I think we've said more than enough. We much rather show you than just talk about it. So please, Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Jason, and welcome to Notion Mail. Here's a first look at your inbox, which should look really familiar. Right now, it's syncing an exact copy of my Gmail. But it looks cluttered, and it doesn't look like Notion. I have emails about real estate next to emails from the Guggenheim Museum, next to really important inbound recruiting emails from this new candidate named Ethan. So I'm going to switch to a more minimalist view of my inbox. Bear in mind, Wi-Fi. While it loads, you can think of a view in Notion Mail just like a view of your work in Notion, where you can filter, sort, organize, and group by what matters to you. So I'm actually going to hide email body text, just to keep this view of my emails simpler and less cluttered. Wow, would you look at that? We've built a whole library of views and templates for your inbox, so you can stay organized no matter what you do in email, whether it's recruiting, customer service, sales, or just staying on top of your endless GitHub emails. Now, let's dig in to getting some work done. Here's an even more focused view of my recruiting emails. And look at that, you can see my email from Ethan right at the top. But unlike every single other email product out there, my emails aren't listed by date. They're organized by my workflow. And here I see candidates that are in the resume review phase, interviewing, or even one, Eli, who's accepted an offer. Let's go back to Ethan. Right now, this email's labeled as a recruiting email. It's been tagged with the engineering role, and it's been moved into the resume review step of my process. And I didn't apply a single one of these labels by hand. Notion AI did it all for me based on a quick prompt that I've written for my inbox. Even more importantly, Notion AI actually wrote this entire first draft. I didn't have to type a single key. And just like Jason mentioned, we've added some advanced email blocks, like the schedule block, which connects to your Notion calendar and finds the perfect time for you to meet. But what if that's not good enough? What if I wanted to work even faster? And that's where Notion AI saves us a hand again, with auto reply. I can turn on the scheduling auto reply, and Notion AI will get to work, thinking, drafting, and then doing all those steps for me, connecting to Notion Calendar and making a booking link so Ethan just has to schedule with one click. Now, normally, when you'd be tempted to hit snooze, try out Notion AI and auto reply and save a bunch of time every day. This only works because Notion Mail, Notion, and Notion Calendar work together seamlessly on day one, and we think you're going to love it. All right, this was just a quick first look at Notion Mail, and we hope you saw how Notion Mail is personalized with views and prompts for your workflows. It's smart, where Notion AI can label and draft emails right when they come into your inbox, and it's also beautiful. Imagine using the / command, @mentions, emojis, callouts, and quotes right in your email editor. So, we have a big surprise. Everyone here in person gets access to Notion Mail today. We're also opening up a waitlist for everyone listening online, and we'll give you a much deeper first look later today on stage 2 at 1:35 p.m., and we hope you love it. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, Andrew and Jason. Today, Notion Mail takes us one step closer to our mission. It brings beauty and creativity to another essential tool for your life's work. But we're not stopping here, and we need your help and feedback to make Notion even better for you. So please say hi and give us your feedback, and we're pretty easy to find because we're all wearing the Notion jackets here. Right? And we'll do our best to turn your feedback into our roadmap. Thank you.
Please welcome Dan Schipper, Sarah Guo, and Daniela Amadei.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is my mic working? Yes, it's working. Hello. We are here to talk about AI and creativity. My name is Dan Schipper. I'm the co-founder of Every. Every is a daily newsletter about what comes next in tech. And I also host the podcast AI and I. And I'll ask you, Sarah, to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Guo. I am the founder of a venture firm called Conviction, which is purpose-built to back AI companies. And abashedly, I'm also the co-host of a podcast called No Priors.
Hi everybody, I'm Daniela. I am the president and co-founder of Anthropic.
Daniela, I want to start with you. So, one of the striking things to me about AI and creativity is our sort of polar relationship to it. I think for me, I mostly feel a sense of delight about it, like it gives me so many powers to do new things, and then I think there's also a sense of trepidation because I'm like figuring out like what's my role in this new world with this new tool. So I want to ask you, like, what do you think the role of AI in the creative process is?
So I think this is such a ripe and I think very important question, which is as we're sort of developing these very powerful transformative AI tools, what is really the role for the AI and what is the role for the human? And so much of what we talk about at Anthropic is the ways that Claude can really expand what is humanly possible. And part of why we have that vision is I truly think a tool like Claude can be very, very valuable for helping with a lot of the back-end administrative assistant type work that is required in every field, right, including creative fields. There's so much administrative work that has to be done around filtering emails or reviewing proposals, right? And I think really the vision that we have is one of AI really helping to remove a lot of the sort of overhead and burden that comes with doing administrative tasks so that humans are really freed up to focus more on the creative, the interpersonal components of the work that we do.
Cool. Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I tend to think that there's an abundance of creativity, including amongst people who do not think of themselves as creators. Everybody has a point of view, right? And you have taste, and you have things that you would want to create, and then you do not have an abundance of technical skills. At least for myself, like I can paint,
Like I learned to paint for many years, and then I have no visual point of view, right? And so I do not consider myself an artist at all. But I think that the opposite is probably true for a much broader class of people. And so when I look at the tools that people have today, I think many more people have ideas that could be communicated in writing, in software, in the visual arts, and video that are not being created because their taste is above their skill level, and I think that will no longer be true.
I feel that. When I was a kid, I always wanted to make movies and video games, but I ended up making SaaS apps because that's the only thing that a kid can make. And Sarah,
it's pretty weird, Dan.
We can go into that later.
You could also just make crappy games.
Yeah, I guess I could have done that. And Daniela, to your point, one of the things I've noticed as a creative person is working with AI. You're talking about kind of AI being helpful for those administrative tasks and the drudgery. And one of the things that I notice as a creative is how much drudgery there actually is in what I would normally call my creative process.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the core creative work that I'm doing, but then, for example, I have to tweet it out. And that tweet is kind of hard to make, and Claude is quite good for stuff like that. Have you seen that happening?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good example is, if you imagine sort of within anybody's kind of workflow or the set of things that they do best, there's, both the kind of thing you're talking about, which is, first of all, creating that sort of scaffold. I love the example that you used of you as a kid. I'm not a developer, right? I can't write code, but with the assistance of Claude, can I mock up a basic website? Maybe that's a form of creative pursuit for me that I would have thought would never be possible, right? Because I just didn't have the ability or I didn't have the skill. And then I think additionally, there's always, if you really kind of dig in with any of our users, really across any type of use case and say, what's the part of your job that's the most annoying, right? Maybe for you it's writing tweets. Some folks might love writing tweets, right? And they might say, I would be so sad to use Claude to write my tweets. I wouldn't want to do that. But really having to, read through all my emails, that would make me so sad. It would be so great if I spent less time on email. I think that really varies, but the goal here is to have this kind of productive tool that really enables you to be able to do the parts of your work that you love the most. And I really do think what we've seen is that human element is the thing that brings the tool to life, not the other way around.
Yeah. Sarah, for you, I think one of the best ways to predict the future is to build it. That's a cliche that we know, and I think it's true. And one of the interesting things about your vantage point as a VC is you get to see the creative tools that people are building that we might be using in the next 5 or 10 years. And I'm kind of curious, what you're seeing and what are the patterns there? What are people who are building the future of creativity building?
I think it's a really big question, but I can give you a few examples. Yeah. One, I think, is just a really interesting pattern. Maybe I'll start with this very, hopefully brief story. When I started the firm, a venture investor that I love and respect gave me it's like a crystal hammer as a gift. And they're like, Sarah, you can't invest behind a technology trend. You're a hammer looking for a nail. And I'm like, it's a really good hammer. There's a lot of nails out there. It's a very general hammer. So we keep this on the shelf in our office because I think it's funny. And I hope I'm right. But the reason it relates to creative tools is a lot of the great technologists, they are actually starting with the hammer. They're going capabilities first. And I think you want both types of thinking, right? User-back thinking and capability-first thinking. Yeah. But the interesting thing about being capabilities first is if you take a company called HeyGen that I'm on the board of, they do video generation of human avatar video, right? So yourself or any person speaking about topics, interacting with environments and other people, and they have core models that they work on and product around it to make it more expressive and match the infinite expectations of users. But this interesting challenge of any of these capability-first companies is the user has this set of expectations of all of the video in the world that they could be making. Or as you said, even as a kid, you're like, oh, I'll direct a movie, I'll make a game. And they don't, we cannot meet all of those expectations yet, right? And so you're constantly pushing the bound, but to the point of tools shaping us, one of the really interesting things, and Anthropic is an example of this too, or Claude is if you give users very broad access to a tool, even an incomplete tool, like if it is so much easier than capturing video, like 100, 1,000x easier and cheaper, what people thought they wanted to make is no longer what they want to make, right? They'll make whatever they can with the tooling. And so I think it is this really interesting play back and forth of like, like we're starting capabilities first in a lot of these creative tools, but it changes the scope of what people want to create. And you kind of meet in the middle. It's this really like organic process between the user and the builder of the tools. Because people still want tons of control. So the next thing HeyGen is shipping, they're like shipping model improvements and all this, but they're also shipping what feels like an editor. It's regeneration, right? But it's like an editor experience because people want to change, one thing at the end.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And Daniela, for you, like, I assume when you launched Claude, it's a general purpose tool, but I assume you had some ideas of like what people would use it for. In terms of creative tasks, what was your original idea, and like what have you found that surprised you about how people are using it for creative tasks?
Yeah, so I definitely think this concept of, administration and sort of time saving, that was always in the back of our mind because it feels so general, right? And that is true in the creative space, it's true in enterprise businesses, it's true for developers. But I think the place that has been a little bit more surprising to us, I think really to Sarah's point, is just the amount of kind of creative opportunity that it has opened up for people. I really think coding is, of course, the province of developers, but I think for many, many people, coding feels like something that is inaccessible to them, right? They've tried to learn to code, or they work in a department sort of related to it, and the ability to have this tool where you can sort of explain what you want and have it help build and create with you, I think has been really, really powerful for many creatives we work with. I also think Claude can just be a really great thought partner. I definitely use Claude for like some of my, very unimpressive creative pursuits, but I think being able to really sort of talk to like a friendly, interactive, generative partner about, hey, what are the ways to get better at painting, right? I'm like, I like to do this. It's really fun. I'm not that good at it. Like, what is the best way for me to advance or get better? And I think for a lot of the designers or the creative folks that use Claude, a lot of what we hear is that partnership, almost that companionship in the creative journey. Writers, right, tell us a lot. Claude can't write the way I can write, but it can help unstick me, right? I'm at a point in a story, I don't necessarily know where to go next. I could sit down and talk with a person, or I could just talk to Claude and say, hey, help me, make this part of the story a little bit better, a little bit spicier, a little bit more fun. And again, I think that sort of idea of the kind of human interaction with AI to really advance how we're developing creative ideas, creative pursuits. I think there's a really potentially beautiful world ahead of us there.
That's really interesting, and it reminds me of a question I wanted to ask, which is, I was a little surprised at first to hear you say like, Claude, thinking about it for like administrative back-end sort of tasks, because Claude has this like quirky, like fun vibe, and I'm like, oh, I feel bad making you do my like taxes or whatever. and that's very, I think that's just very different from like in general what we see from creative tools. Like if you go to like last generation, like they're like early Microsoft Office or like Photoshop, like those tools don't have as much personality. And I'm curious like what went into that decision and how does that change what a creative tool can be?
Yeah, so I think there's actually kind of two things here. So one is, Claude is really good at also understanding sort of the context in which you're operating, right? So I think there's its own unique personality and then also its ability to sort of adapt to whatever the situation it is that you are working with Claude for, particularly with a lot of examples, right? So, sometimes internally we're like, Claude, can you just see all of these examples of the way this person sounds? Can you write something that sort of sounds a little bit more like them, right? And you can imagine the creative potential for that is really, really large, right? You're like, this is sort of my body of work. I really want to expand a little bit in sort of the following direction. I'm trying to be a little bit edgier. I'm trying to, shift a little bit more conservative. Can you give me some feedback on how to do that? The second is, how did we design Claude's personality, and why did we kind of think about this sort of more quirky, friendly, approachable sort of assistant? And I think there's a few reasons for that. One is we really wanted people to feel like Claude was a tool that they could use every day. And in the same way I say, as we're sitting in these like very unique chairs, like a chair that's comfortable to sit in for a very long period of time, right? Something that you can really feel is this sort of warm companion, this warm partner in helping you in whatever your pursuits might be, whether they're in the business world or personally. And then I think the second is it just creates a better user experience when you feel like there's this personality that is a little bit more friendly, open, accessible. And of course, Claude takes tone direction well, so you can always tweak it. But I think there's something that is valuable for having that kind of honest, open sort of first cut.
That makes sense. It's funny that you referenced the chairs. First of all, Notion, I think, has the most attention to chairs of any company that I've ever been around, and it's very cool. These chairs are amazing. But it also brings to mind this word, which I think expresses something that you're saying about Claude, and is sort of a popular word right now, which is like ergonomics, like the ergonomics of the software. And I think, I'm curious, Sarah, for you, what have you seen about the way that the ergonomics of AI have changed what it is to use software, and in particular, like, are you seeing this sort of like giving software a personality thing happen in the places that you're investing, or in the companies that you think have a chance to be big? Like, how's that playing out for you?
Yeah, I'll describe a few. First of all, these are really cool chairs, but clearly they haven't been user tested with child-sized people. They're a little harder for smaller people. I'll give you two signals in more seriousness. One is, like, I think everybody has seen the series of companionship applications, AI companions, and the fact that there is so much engagement with them has to be one signal to us of like, well, I think we knew this, but humans are very social creatures. And interacting with something that has personality and natural language is a very natural and compelling thing, right? And so I think that's obvious. I think another thing that is just becoming more and more clear every day, and there are a bunch of really cool announcements from Anthropic today and recently on this, is natural language in a blank text box is certainly not the be-all, end-all, right? I think there are many ways to give rich input and to give context to these models that, like, as capabilities improve, product people and entrepreneurs and engineers are just now exploring. And so I'll give like a really trivial example. One of my partners at Conviction, a guy named Pranav Reddy, he was like a national level championship debater, good and bad. And like many people, he finds it challenging to write, but he can communicate in like the spoken form and produce writing much more effectively, right? And so if it is like you prefer the Socratic method, or as an artist, you want something that feels more like direct manipulation, right? I do not believe that the future is just going to be text to image or video or whatever it is for the visual mediums. Like people want to be very specific about those input mechanisms. And so I think like as you get long horizon task completion and much more capable models, and people who are just more experimental, like we're gonna get, I think natural language with personality is super powerful, but I think we're gonna get a much richer set of user experiences.
Yeah, I wanna turn that over to you, Danielle. Like, what do you think, is chat like going to be a core component of the way that we interact with AI in 5 to 10 years, or are there other affordances are gonna be more used or more useful? What do you see how do you see the paradigm changing over the next couple years?
Yeah, I really agree with Sarah, which is I think text and chat and sort of language. In some ways, it doesn't just like surprise me that that's where AI kind of started, because humans are so verbal, right? We develop language really early. We like to communicate, in either by talking or by writing, and I think it is just interesting, sort of thinking back, even 5 years ago. Or 10 years ago, which is like a lifetime ago in AI times.
The dark ages.
The dark ages, yeah. I think there was just like a little bit of an interesting sort of debate about like how important is language as a modality, right? Is it actually really more important to think about voice? Is it more important to think about images? And there was kind of a long period of time where images were the thing, right? Like in the early 2010s, that was sort of the kind of AI frontier. And it's a little hard for me to know if it's just a quirk of the way the research went or the particular people that were working on it, but I definitely think we sort of came through a particular door, and that's kind of been the original entry point. And my sense is that that's going to continue to sort of expand over time, but I don't know how sticky it is that it sort of started with text, right? My sense is I think there's so much room in this space, right, to innovate and to develop, and my guess is we're gonna continue to see innovation, both from the model providers, but then also from just thousands and thousands of creative companies at the application layer and other parts of the stack that are really honing in on different areas.
Yeah. That makes sense. And to the point earlier about sort of personality and personality being an interesting dimension along which to innovate in terms of a product, one of the things about personality that strikes me is like it can be really helpful, but it's also like sort of a fine line where it's like getting too much of a personality. You start to anthropomorphize the tool a lot. How do you guys see the line there between like a tool that feels friendly and like it knows you versus like something that you get like so emotionally attached to or addicted to that you're like, you can't, it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think most of what we hear from our users about Claude is very, friendly and approachable and polite, but also there's almost a dose of formality in there.
Yeah.
Right? Claude is not sort of pinging you to say, hey, how's it going today, right? It's like Claude sort of responds when you ask it a question, and it will kind of, there is a certain, I don't know if like formality or professionalism.
It always apologizes to me no matter what.
Claude is so I know I need to.
Claude's doing its best.
Claude, some lessons like you don't have to apologize so much. You're doing great, Claude. But I think there's an element of wanting to just be thoughtful of like, hey, this is still a tool, right? It's still something that is intended to have this kind of approachability and accessibility for people, but not necessarily to be, overly pushy or something.
That makes sense.
I do think that, it depends on the use case.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think there'll be real therapy use cases.
Yeah.
But in contrast, going further down the professionalism, but though still with many choices track, like we're investors in a company called Sierra. Sierra does customer service agents. Mm-hmm. And a big part of what the company has to work with customers on is like, well, what is the personality that you want your company and your brand voice to have?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of functional things it needs to do, but like how will it engage? Mm-hmm. How helpful do you want it to be? Like, how should it hedge? Like, these are all really important questions that I think you're going to decide very differently depending on use case.
Yeah, that is interesting. How are you seeing people dealing with the, like in the previous era of software, if you coded the thing, it would just do exactly what you said all the time. And if it made a mistake, it's because you coded the mistake, And now, like you said, there's this sort of stochastic nature to what it's going to say. Kind of give it a vibe of the voice it's going to have. How are you seeing people dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, if I just go back to the example of Sierra, and I'm sure Anthropic thinks about this very deeply, like there's shaping the model's behavior in pre-training and post-training, and then there's guardrails, right? And so like I think there are some hard bounds you want to apply, and then there's like creating the vibe, right? And I think that's going to be true in a bunch of different domains.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'm curious, Daniela, I think that obviously Claude is a super powerful creative tool, and I'm kind of wondering if you have a sense for the kinds of creatives that are getting the most out of it. What are the traits or characteristics of someone who it really like transforms their creative practice?
Yeah, I think there's actually quite a few. So unsurprisingly, I definitely think folks that engage in any kind of trade involving writing find Claude very helpful. That's probably not that surprising, right? And I think, in particular, that kind of ability for Claude to really understand your tone, your body of work, and be this kind of coach, right? To help unstick writers, regardless of what it is that they're working on, whether that's creative or professional, but still in a creative space. I also think for increasingly, designers being able to use Claude, even just from sort of a vibes perspective, right? To say, hey, what is the kind of content that I'm aiming to create? Like, what are the feelings I'm hoping to evoke? And again, using Claude as this kind of thought partner, in the same way that you would with an agency or a studio that you work with, having just another perspective that kind of, again, understands your full portfolio, I think can be like incredibly, incredibly powerful. Also, I mean, this is more in a selfish way, but Claude is great at recommending things that are like other things. So I don't know if you've ever used like Goodreads or something. Claude is so much better at that, right? I'm like, hey, you can describe, right? Like, I like this set of books, and I like this set of movies, and you might not necessarily see the way that they connect, but I like things that are about, very strong feelings, and I also really like things that are sort of like, I like things that are set in the Midwest, whatever it is that sort of your preferential style is. As a consumer, that's also obviously very valuable, but I actually think as a creator, that's kind of equally valuable, right? In just unlocking what are the kind of core underlying elements that are often hard to articulate, right? Like, people write these think pieces, like, why was this movie so successful? But I think there is this, I find quite impressive ability for Claude to say, I see the theme, right? I see the pattern that you're kind of gesturing towards. And I think that really enables people to get a little bit of a wider aperture for how they're developing their ideas, regardless of sort of what the creative space it is that they're in.
You're so right. And I think some of my most powerful experiences with AI, and with Claude in particular, relates to that idea of taste. Both for allowing, what it's done for me is help me to articulate what my taste is, because I'm like, I can point to, okay, I like this book and I like this movie, put it into words. And what used to seem like this sort of disconnected mass of things, Claude can identify that underlying pattern that I now have words for. I can be like, oh, I really like philosophical type writing, or I really like lyrical prose, like that kind of thing, which I've always felt, but I've never been able to say. And then as a creative, once you can say those words, then you can find more of it, and you can also measure your work against those things, so it becomes like a little bit of a target to move toward. So that's been really powerful for me. Have you noticed something similar, either of you?
This is not well, I don't think of it as a creative process, but even in investing, something that I'm going to try now that I've heard Daniela talk about this is we have a point of view on technology and markets and product theses and everything else, but we're people first as early stage investors. And like many other venture firms, it helps me to make a judgment to articulate it in writing. Yeah. And yet, most people are not particularly practiced at explaining their taste in people, just like in media art or whatever it is, because it's I don't know, it's somewhere between uncomfortable and uncommon to say, what makes this person special? Special is a very coarse word, right? What are the traits we're particularly, excited to work with? Yeah. And I think that is a capability that I want to encourage, at least in our partnership, to figure out how to talk about people, because I think it improves our judgment. Yeah. And maybe we can use these tools to help with that. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any specific examples, obviously without specific names of people, but of words or things that you've come to identify with Claude or with any other tool that you can now say that you hadn't been able to say before about people?
I mean, I'd say I've tried to be good at this over a long period of time with a bunch of trading data of my own errors and everything. But let me think about that for a second in terms of the writing that has been generated or the feedback that has been generated. I at some point I asked an AI bot, okay, well, here are the traits that I gave it a memo, right, that I'd written, and here are the traits that I describe about core entrepreneurialism, given this set of memos. Yeah. Do you see a pattern I don't see? Yeah. Right, and I actually got a somewhat surprising answer back, which is quite the word they came up with was persistent but open-minded belief, the phrasing, and I'm that's pretty insightful. Thank you, AI, right? Because Paul Graham actually just wrote an essay, I think relatively recently, or maybe I'm just reading it, that is about the difference between persistence and stubbornness. Yeah. And I thought this was well articulated. I was like, oh, well, I'm glad you guys got at that out of my like 50,000 words. Wish I'd found it first, right?
That's great. I love that. Do you have any examples like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that's really interesting here is, a lot of what we're kind of talking about is what to me can feel almost like more of a like opt-in or kind of consent-driven version of what I think a lot of traditional algorithms are trying to do, right? And I think there's a more human personalized touch to the ability to do this with an AI tool, right? And it can be about every different type of context, right? It's not just sort of targeting you for things you want to buy, right? It's like, hey, what's your taste, right? I think that's like a really, really good kind of encapsulation of it. And I think, something that's very interesting, I think, in the long term is just thinking about these tools' ability to kind of understand like kind of key components of your values or your taste or your personality. And I think there's something very like powerful about that potential. For me right now, again, that looks like helping to just better understand, what do I like to read, and like why do I like to read it, and just the sort of discovery potential for it feels very wide. But I also think Claude is a great coach. Like I use Claude all the time to say, okay, here are the areas where I'm trying to improve, or here's where I'm coaching my team. What are ways for me to be more effective? And the more context and information you give it, the better it's gonna understand the sort of history, right? It's gonna say, oh, I see, you gave this person this set of feedback last time, here, they've worked on the following things. How can I kind of coach them and coach you more effectively? So I think there's gonna be a huge amount of potential for just that personalization as time goes on.
I want to go back to a question you asked about who's getting the most out of these tools right now, and also to what Daniela said about, coding feels very inaccessible to, the vast majority of the people who are not the 25 million like professional developers in the world. One of the things that like we really look for, but we think is an enabling feature for entrepreneurs or just users of these AI tools is like, are you reasoning as if capability is actually going to improve, right? Because these tools, they start very incomplete and with like some level of quality. And of course, they start by helping people who have no capability or low level capability because it's still better than them, right? And so I think a pattern that I've seen is, if you look at Cursor, Cognition, Stackblitz, and then the tools inherent in the foundation model companies, I think a year and a half ago, you would have said like, oh, that's like pretty useful for like an entry-level developer. Like, I'm a pro Rust developer, right? Like, I don't need this stuff, right? Like, my understanding of memory is here, and like, this is nonsense. But I think that is no longer true, right? And I think that will continue to be less and less true. And so I think that there's a diffusion of innovation, like the Geoffrey Moore framework, that's happening on the enterprise customer side. And I think that's also happening on the user side. And the people who are going to get the most out of it, like fastest, are those who like picture that happening. And they're like, oh, I'm going to try it anyway. So maybe it goes back to being open-minded.
I love that. I feel like we could keep talking for hours, but we're getting the high signs. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Please welcome Oren John, Zaria Parvez, and Nashilu Moen.
All right. Check, check. Welcome, everybody. We'll let you don't be afraid. We're social media folks, but we don't bite. You guys can come up as close as you want. All right. Welcome to Building Bleeding Edge Brands. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about the brand experience online and in social media. My name is Oren. I'm a marketing executive turned creator. I specialize in creative direction and content strategy. And I'm joined by Zaria, who is the Senior Social Media Manager at Duolingo, and Nash, who is the Head of Storytelling at the Browser Company. And so we're not going to have any icebreakers. We're going to go right in and start and really get into the weird worlds of what's happening in marketing today. So we'll start with, what is your most controversial take on traditional marketing? Nash, you want to start?
I wish mine was going to be controversial. I think my biggest opinion in traditional, and I'm not a traditional marketer by background, is that stories are going to become increasingly the most important part of what you're putting out into the world. And that isn't just external, I think it's internal. So I think you'll see marketing coming down earlier in the creation of your company, because that's how you create brands like Notion, when it's the earliest side of what your company actually believes in is what you then bring out.
Zaria, what about you?
I would say mine is make your social playbooks and then burn them.
Ooh, I'll slide a quick one in that I think that for most brands, 95%, let's say, that brand guidelines, traditional brand guidelines, are hurt way more than they help on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, Zaria, Duolingo is very well known for its unconventional, unhinged approach to social media, especially for an educational brand. How does a team operate under that philosophy day to day?
Yeah, I think for us, I would be lying to say that's what it started as. Like, we were all of a sudden like unhinged and that's what it was. Like, we actually went through a lot of different iterations of building our story. And initially it was kind of what you'd expect, like language learning content, like slang in different languages, and it was flopping really hard. And there actually came a point where we launched a TikTok and then we actually stopped it for like a year because it just wasn't working for us. And then when we got back into the office, this was post-COVID, TikTok said they had 1 billion monthly active users. And for us, that was like, shit, if they're on that app, they're not on our app, so what do we do? And that's kind of how this new strategy was born, where we saw that there were memes around Duolingo, but no one's really brought it to video content. So then we started building it out, and really the rest has been history since there, of just a lot of testing and learning and seeing how we can listen to our community and give them what they want.
What's one thing that you thought there was no way this was going to get approved, but they actually let you do?
Oh my God, so much. I think the first video that actually went viral, one of the first videos that went viral for us, was we were just creating content with a mascot suit. And it was like, you know, you can only move so much in that suit. And I think one of them was like, well, what if you just like twerk a little or like dance a little? Like, you know, there was literally very limited movements. And we did it. And like, I remember going to our boss and being like, hey, like this is the audio, it's trending, Duo's doing this. And at that time, it was our boss and our CEO who was checking the content, and just like one word, like 2 words, he was like, ship it. And that was it. I was like, okay. And I think going from there kind of helped us see, like, they wanted us to be more out of pocket, taking more risks and tell our story in a different way than you would see most tech brands doing.
Yeah. What I like most about this kind of, the group we have on this panel, is there's so many different lenses to approach content. You know, Duolingo's taken this viral approach to content and surpassed brand marketing, become basically a cultural force, which is really interesting. But at the browser company, you've taken a more straightforward approach to social, but it still feels like it's going against the grain. Kind of, what's the strategy look like there?
Sure. I can't tell you how many times we've shared Duolingo's pieces internally as like, we should do this too. But I would say for us, it's really an we talk a lot about inversion. And so we tend to look at like, what is the zeitgeist right now? And how can you turn that inside out? And how can you make that your own? And so for us, as an example, when we were shipping our first AI features last October, and everything was so massive with AI, and it was so big, and it was so world-changing, we wanted to ask, what if AI felt small, like how you would maybe sell a kitchen knife in like a cooking show? And so that's how we released our AI, was like literally our team was in a kitchen talking about AI like it was a kitchen knife. And so for us, it's always been, how do we look externally and then invert that internally, but using channels in a more traditional way than how Duolingo does. I
love that kitchen example. Any other particular campaigns you're proud of, or you think really embody the brand experience you're going for?
Yeah, I think that we've thought a lot about how do you show up really personally and put people at the forefront of it. And that's, for us, that was strategic because we are a browser, so we're in the world of a Chrome, a Safari, et cetera. And what can our competitors not do is be people behind a screen instead of just being like a big faceless entity. And so we've always tried to be really personal in how we approach it. We did a keynote earlier this year, and the way that you typically think of a keynote is, you know, black t-shirt, black background, Steve Jobs-esque. But we actually went to your hometown in LA and did it in a diner in LA. And we had some of our members come and hear about our features there. And so that was an inversion of what should be big and faceless actually can you make it really small and personal and in a setting that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I think stands out the most and why you get so much advocacy is just when you go against these huge incumbent brands that you use to navigate the web every day and then have that personal touch. I think that's a really interesting playbook and one a lot of brands who are going into the same thing should definitely consider.
Yeah.
So you're both setting the trends. How do you find them? What actually influences you? You want to throw it right back to you.
I would say there are two things that influence us. The first is we look a lot outside of the industry. And so it's kind of the DNA of our team. That's the second thing is our team is very non-traditional in certain ways. Carla, who's our brand designer, was a product designer, and then she's an artist also who paints. Josh Lee, who does our video, was a documentary person before we joined the browser company. I write poetry outside of work. And so our reference points, we really try and push outside of the day-to-day. And so that might be A24 is a big reference point for us in the way that they've branded their movies and the way that they've approached studios, or Celine and fashion houses is another way that we think about it. But we really try to look outside of what's in front of us, because you can't do anything new if you're just looking at what exists today.
What about you, Zari? What influences you?
Yeah, I think for us, it's actually stand-up comedy, if I'm being honest. Like, we really have this whole spiel where, like, we want to essentially have our TikTok accounts or Reels or whatever video content we're putting out there be this sitcom, and everything we put out there is, like, an episode to that. So, like, SNL, like, is a big influence for us, and how can you make a tech brand almost into a production company that's just making and telling different stories that you wouldn't expect, and then obviously interjecting, like, language learning insights in there that we all experience and face at some point in our lives, just because we're humans and we all use language, and just finding ways to bring that messaging in a really funny and unique way.
Nice, and I've been thinking about this a lot just because a lot of the content I make online is about actually showing the trends or what's coming and having to be ahead of those predictions. And so I work a lot in the group chat. So I have a group chat with some other really large creators, and I have a group chat with designers I've met worldwide. We have one from Hong Kong, we have one from Berlin, like a handful of people. And the idea is, just like any group chat, you share your content, you share your memes, but I've been trying to apply frameworks to it, where we ask each other, okay, do we think that this is good or bad? Let's develop an actual opinion, because then you begin to have a lens versus just consuming, and then asking, is this something that's coming, or is this something that's going? So we can say, is this entering the zeitgeist, is it leaving? Because then you're beginning to have an idea of like what works, and when you start to have a track record there, you begin to understand both your thought and like how the internet travels, and I think it's an interesting framework to think about. But at the end of the day, we're in this kind of attention economy where we're all fighting for 2 seconds that are on a feed. And what I love most about both of the brands you work for is you have world building, you have a brand narrative, you have character creation. Zaria, can you share a bit of your brand strategy there?
Yeah, I think for us, like, the truth of the matter is that people don't care about advertising. Like, we love it, we talk about it, and our brand. Like, I breathe, eat and read Duolingo all day, but like, it's probably, maybe if we're lucky, 30 seconds of your day. So it's how do you kind of get yourself out of that mindset? And we've really developed this whole thing that we call candy to the medicine, where essentially the candy is gonna be like duo twerking on a conference room table, but the medicine will be like, well, how we community manage it, how we talk about different languages, or how we bring in like things that we should be talking about, like different product updates and so on and so forth, and really doing it in a way that people wanna hear about it. Nowadays, right, when you go on social, you're scrolling for yourself to be entertained. You're not scrolling to see an ad, and if you see an ad, you probably skip through it. Like, I skip through ads. So how do we make content that's good enough to be that candy that you don't even realize it's an ad until maybe you go a little bit deeper in and then you see the medicine, but you're so hopped up on the candy that you're okay with the medicine at that point.
Love the metaphor. Yeah. And so by contrast, you've taken a really interesting approach to developing human characters at the browser company. Can you talk a little bit about that strategy?
Sure. I think it's so interesting because we talk a lot about entertainment as well, and people just want to be entertained today. And so when we were thinking about our brand strategy, we had a presentation internally, I think 2 years ago, where we decided that we don't have a brand voice. We have many voices that are building a product. And so where we've taken inspiration from was reality TV in terms of like what would be the real world in terms of following these characters. We took a lot of inspiration also from HBO in the way that if you watch Game of Thrones, you want to watch the behind the scenes because you want to learn more about it. And could you create that same feeling for software where you want to know more about the people who are building the products behind it? And so for us, it's really been, we talk of our team as like a cast, and we have different characters that create different products that people follow because they like the types of features that they build. But it's really it's a company with a story that you're following than just a company that's releasing features here and there.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think an exercise any company should do is look at their brand like a TV show or like a reality show. And if you're going into planning your content for next year, all right, who are our characters? What are our sets? Like, what are the events? What are the plot lines? Who are our enemies? Like, who are we competing against? Who are our friends, our collaborators? And I think when you actually map that out, you begin to develop a really interesting content strategy, and then also identify where the gaps are and things you have to fill or create ideas for. But overall, the past few years, we've had these recurring themes of community and influencer as the things that are kind of driving the changes in marketing. You know, as thought leaders, people doing really interesting things with the brands you work with, how are you tactically preparing for the future? What are you thinking about as far as what's next?
Yeah, so when it comes to creators, we've actually found that when we have creators on our own channels or we work with them, it actually doesn't work as well for some reason. But like when we have normal, everyday users who are actual Duolingo users posting UGC about whether they're hitting like a 100-day streak and they threw themselves a party, like that'll pop off. Or like if we create these UGC moments. So recently we actually had the duo Owl go hijack one of Charlie XCX's concerts. And I mean, it's green, like it just made sense. And we were there and we literally just showed up with a suit outside of the stadium in Detroit. No permits, nothing, just to see what would happen. And honestly, just having the suit being in that presence had so much UGC, people just posting videos of the duo Owl being there, and those would like go crazy. But if we posted us being at Charlie, like it did fine, but it wasn't as crazy as other people posting. So I think for us, what's really on the horizon is like, how do we create these natural UGC moments? With right now, it's the duo suit, but hopefully we can bring our app into that, streaks into it. Like how can we bring in product features that people also want to post UGC about? So I think we're really going down that path.
I love the idea of kind of aligning the product features as well. Thinking about how do you as a marketing team help inform some of the other teams on that. It's really interesting. But what about you? How are you preparing for the future? What do you think of the trends that are coming next?
I think a big thing we're thinking about is brand progression. And by that, as our product is evolving, as most products do evolve, we're really thinking about how do we continue to stand out. And if you've noticed, I think, especially in the space of AI right now, most brands like are kind of floral and they're kind of like paintings and everybody wants to feel like it's not technology or scary. And so as we think about how do we show up over the next year, how do you invert the way the brands are portraying themselves, that's, I think, top of mind for us right now.
Yeah. And so in this next section, we're going to talk a lot about organic content and community, which are buzzwords, but also something I think a lot of brands are thinking about. There's a conversation around, is organic content dead? Are we just yelling into a void? What happens when things kind of don't work on our feed? And I'll kick off here because this is a passion point for me, where I feel so many brands think of content in like a finite world. They say, hey, we have one account, we do our post every day, and if it works, it works. If we do have a good post, then we go on to the next one. Whereas the algorithms give us essentially an infinite content opportunity. And you'll see these interesting new brands will have an account for themselves. The founder will have an account, maybe a few team members, maybe there's a behind-the-scenes account, and then you'll see software brands with 3 creators, 5 creators, 10 creators on TikTok that are working for them, and product brands that have TikTok Shop affiliates with 5 or 10 that are making content there, or maybe a secondary YouTube channel, and they're beginning to say, different faces, different ideas, let's kind of promote and push this out there, and we actually can scale that to basically as far as the ideas can take us. And I think that there's a lot of brands that would be well to think about how do we kind of get out of this one post a day fallacy, and how do we think more about that, and how do we enable our team and our community to do more. And so I'm curious, Zaria, with you, beyond your brand accounts, how does Duolingo think about reach? How does it think about brand experience, kind of community, and organic content?
Yeah, so I would say organic content is honestly our bread and butter, and it's what really put our marketing on the map, which is pretty unique because I think video content is what really skyrocketed for us. And I would say our top performing content, we always say, comes from the comment section. Like the comment section is absolutely our social brief. People will say something, we'll iterate on it, and we send out like a lot of social signals. So something that might take, say, me, our social media manager, maybe an hour to film, that somebody said, we'll film it, and if there's a lot of positive reaction to it, then those actually indicate like bigger brand campaigns that we'll do. So for example, like a lot of people will comment like Spanish or vanish, French or the trench, or like threats like that. And we would make small videos and they would do well, but then it became, how do we actually make this like feel legitimate? So for an April Fool's campaign, we actually put like a ton of investment and money into it and made a whole fake legal ad that if you've ever been threatened by the Duolingo Owl, you can call this hotline and report him. And the hotline was active and real, and people were actually reporting the owl. But that was from like the comment section. Like we just put it into a brand campaign. So I feel like organic is great for like these small social signals to let you know like what you can make even bigger and better and like keep pushing the brand messaging you want.
So taking that like one little step deeper, so how does your team actually review that? Is that like a meeting you have every week or every month? How do you actually dive into that comment section and turn those ideas to a campaign?
Yeah, so every Tuesday we have a content team shebang bang, and that's what it's called. And we actually go through like top comments that we're all seeing, and there's 3 of us now on the social team, so we'll go through top trends we're seeing, top comments, and then our strategist will inform us on like, these are fandoms that people who are already commenting on Duolingo are interested in, so maybe you should go into that. So like for like right now, we're really into the Dress to Impress fandom. I'm now a Roblox girly. So we're finding areas like that of like how we can really let the community inform where we go next.
Nice. And so, Nash, your brand has been built significantly about like by the consumer brand advocacy. Like your consumers are just such a powerful voice. I've heard about ARC, I don't know, mostly through friends and just like that passion that comes behind it. How does your team work to kind of enable that, respond to it, and just work with that future in general?
Yeah, for sure. For us, all of our growth has been organic to date, so we haven't done any paid, which we will be doing at some point soon. But I think for the way that we've approached it, it's really been speaking to your people. And I think when people shout into the void, it's when you don't have a sense of who you're talking to, and so you're kind of talking to everybody. And it's that you're using platforms in the way that everyone else would use them. And so for us, I'd say 2 examples are on Twitter. When we first launched our ARC Twitter account outside a browser company, it was a closed account, which was only for members of the product itself. And so Ryan, who was on the team at the time, would have them email their handle to give them access to ARC Internet. And so what that created was a small group of people who were really fervent about the content that you were putting out, the prototypes that we were sharing, and that grew into a 50,000 closed Twitter account, but people really felt like they were bought into it, right? On YouTube, the way that we've used our YouTube has been like a creator. And so you're blogging, you're vlogging, it's not just a repo for the videos that you're shipping somewhere else. And so you're really creating community with the folks on the platform and talking to them versus trying to get beyond them or just talking to anyone and no one in particular.
So I'll also dive in there on that tactical level.
Please.
So these are like pretty high concept ideas. They take a lot of thought. It's a pretty serious strategy. How does your team kind of go about shaping that as you work?
Yeah. So similar to Shebang Bang over here, we have a writer's room that we do every Tuesday. Yours is on Tuesday too? Cute! Tuesday go. So every Tuesday, but the way that we use those meetings is we have 2 types. One is a go wide meeting, and you want to bring in everything, every reference point, everything you could do, and then whoever's DRI on that project will then go and say, okay, these are 3 absurd directions we could go in, and I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to start to put it through. And the other is just bringing a project that somebody's working on and giving them all of the feedback on how far they can push it. And so we like to start from what is the largest thing that we can do, and like what would we actually ask ourselves, what would our competitors or what would our peers never do, and work back from there. And that's how we start to move it forward.
So we have a few unserious questions that we'll throw in here as well, just to take a breather from the tactics.
Yes.
So if you could hire any writer, content producer, social media person, dead or alive, to work on the brand, who would it be? Okay.
Sarah Schneider from SNL.
Wow.
Ooh, that's cool.
Any reasons as to why, or what do you expect her to bring to the campaign?
She's just funny as hell. Like I think she would just write content that we would never think of, and like, yeah, she would just make really cool skits.
What about for you?
I would hire PG Lang. It is the creative agency of Dave Free and Kendrick Lamar, and they've been collaborating since they were in high school. And every creative video that you've seen, the brand collaborations that they do, it's the 2 of them. So this is my bat signal that I will be working with. I will be working with Browser Code, but yeah.
So on that note, I'd love to hear any brands or creators you think are doing a really interesting job. What do you kind of consume in your feed? What are you excited about or go, oh man, I really love what they're doing?
I consume really small accounts, so I'm not such a big account girl. It's primarily writers in Brooklyn, and so storytellers, but of the written word. And so one example would be this lady, Latanya Yvette, who's based out of Brooklyn. Another one is this woman, Neka J, who's a videographer, who also does, yes, I heard that, who also does written word and spoken word and video, but that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from.
And so when you go to try to find smaller accounts, what's your process for unearthing things that are interesting to you?
Yeah, it's rabbit holes by the different people that I'm following. And so it'll be, I'm looking at something and maybe they've collaborated with somebody, or maybe I'm seeing somebody in the comments repeatedly, and that's how I'll typically find
I think
curiosity.
It's an important thing to note too for brands or for people trying to build that presence is that collaboration, even at a small level, just engaging in that community, being a person whose voice is out there at any regard is how people discover you. I think people ask a lot of questions about that. I'm always posting. So social media is inherently social, and that the same goes for you if you're a brand as it does for if you're a creator.
Absolutely.
So same question here. What are the brands you find interesting, the creators that are inspiring you?
Yeah, so I feel like I really love creators that are unexpected. Like, you don't just expect them to go viral. So I'm like really into boomers on TikTok. Retirement House is one of my favorite accounts. I love watching old people just do a TikTok dance. I don't know, something about it. And I think it's interesting, right? Because it's like, it's kind of breaks everything that we're taught, like, oh, TikTok just for Gen Z. It's not meant for elder people, but like their ability to like almost also create trends and lead trends. It's just remarkable to me, so I just love old people.
Not the answer I was expecting, but one I'll definitely take. All right, and so again, continuing the more unserious trend, if your brand was a celebrity in terms of how it was engaged on social, and it's a question that's frequent, but I'd love to hear the answers, who would you make it most akin to?
I feel like our CMO and CEO would be like Trevor Noah, but I feel like what I think it is JoJo Siwa.
Oh.
And like the sense of like, she's so, I know I saw those gasps. Okay, hear me out. First of all, she's annoying as hell, right? So is the Duo Owl, let's be real. But like she still has maintained relevancy somehow. Like she's really just reinvented herself over and over. She's leaned into every single meme, has really owned the space, and all of you know who she is. Do you guys know any other Dance Mom people? Probably not. So, yeah, JoJo Siwa, 100%.
Touche. All right, so I'm curious now, what would the answer be for the browser company?
I think for the browser, we've actually been talking about this a little bit internally, and I think that where we are on our journey, the reference point for us has been Frank Ocean, but Nostalgia Ultra to Channel Orange. And so going from if you know, to oh, it's everywhere, I think that's how we're thinking about it.
I absolutely love the idea of a software company considering themselves in that light. I think is a really interesting anecdote.
Thank you. We can only aspire, so.
The juxtaposition is so funny.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's an interesting group. And so look, the last question, this is one of the most personal questions. And I like to ask it to new people I meet. I actually ask people I meet to hand me their phone if they'll let me do it so I can see what's on their social media algorithm, which is inherently personal, but obviously fascinating. And I'll lead with my own just to make sure we're out there. But because my social media algorithm has a significant amount of like oddball Buddhist philosophy has started to show up on TikTok, which was very like right next to your average fitness content, right next to American muscle cars. Those are the things that are most surprising that come across on side of my feed. What are the things that show up when you open to scroll? What comes up? Don't just let loose.
You want to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. I mean, there's just been a lot of snippets of like the Eras tour, like just looking at, Taylor Swift's tour. I have a lot of like epic fail memes. I find those really funny, I guess, and a lot of Roblox.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
For me, I have a lot of London meme accounts, and then I'm actually embarrassed to say this. I have a lot of Love Is Blind on my feed right now, so I know, showing myself, but yes.
All right, and then we have a few minutes left. I want to kind of consider, we have a lot of people out there that are working at brands, that are in social media positions. If you were at a brand today and you were starting your social media from scratch, like how would you go about it? What would be some core ideas or core exercises that you would recommend for anyone out here who really wants to set a strategy and dive into it? Nash, we'll throw it to you first.
Sure. I think I'd say a couple of things. I think the first, going all the way back up to the top, is like, what is your story? What do you believe? How do you show up? Because if it's vacuous, you're not going to go anywhere. And then who are you talking to? But really, who are you talking to? Because you can't build something that's for everyone. And I'd say just like fucking go for it. Like do the different stuff because there's a lot out there that is so boring. So just push the edges of it as much as you can.
Same question to you.
Yeah, I think actually when we were first starting, one of the best piece of advices I got from our old CMO was like, you don't know where the line is unless you cross it. And I feel like that mentality is not really that present for a lot of brands because it's scary. Like you don't know what'll happen. But I think really figuring out a way of how to instill that mentality within your team and your stakeholders is super important. And I think that like without that and the trust to have creative freedom, like I don't think any social can be successful. So I think I would start there of like how do we actually build and develop buy-in from all levels and get creative freedom and make that part of our like DNA.
Makes sense. And I'll say, I work with a lot of brands on who are either struggling with their content or who have kind of started and don't quite know where to go from there. And I always recommend testing formats and ideas as well. If you feel like you have a winning idea, you've seen something, you're like, this is a core concept of content, a lot of people never let it get to the point where they actually win. And so I'll say, hey, sometimes it takes 8 posts, 10 posts, 15 posts to refine in just even a single idea to get there. And people don't want to see flops. They want to give up quick. And sometimes it takes that time. And no one remembers when they went to your account and they saw 8 videos with 100 views. But they will remember that one time they see the 100K. It's purely ego. And the second thing is sometimes it's the format where you're like, hey, this idea resonates, but we need to be doing it in video, or it needs to be a 5-second video versus a 60-second, or a person needs to deliver it, or it needs to be a carousel. And beginning to think through, okay, how do we take these ideas, then find their actual niche and their tactical type of content, and then continue it till it works, and develop that evaluation framework for how do we give this enough of a chance to live. So last question we'll have here is, what are you working on right now, preparing for the end of the year and for the holiday? What are the kind of the top campaigns or the top things that are on your mind as we get to the end?
Yeah, so we're building out our merch store, which has been super exciting because a lot of people have asked for like access to the actual mascot suits. We're trying to figure out like how we can make that something people can like enjoy and buy.
There's no brand liability there at all. It's fine.
Totally, yeah. What? And we actually had our first like brand experience in New York where like people could go and buy some merch, and it was really crazy just to see how many people showed up. So like really finding things for the holiday season that'll like get people excited and get them to do their lesson.
I was gonna say there's probably a pretty high over-under how many Duolingo owl costumes there are for Halloween. I'm sure we get a pop.
Oh yeah, we have a whole Halloween mask, you know?
Yes, love to hear it. What about you?
We're working on a brand evolution at the moment, and so the team is really, really deep in that. And we'll be releasing a video on our YouTube tomorrow that's just like a straightforward sit down with folks in the way we haven't done in a couple months, so getting back to our roots there.
So as a storyteller, when you're doing something like a brand evolution, you know, what are the things you think about? How do you approach something like that?
Ooh, good question. I think the biggest thing is, so 2 things. One is how do you want people to feel? And the other is what is your opinion? And so right now we're actually going into a 10-day sprint on what is the opinion behind the brand that we're building, because if you're not saying anything, if there's nothing that is counter to the current culture, in my opinion, it's boring. And so that's the 10-day sprint that we're going into right now.
To hear it. Thanks everyone for joining us. This has been Building Bleeding Edge Brands. Definitely check out Duolingo and the browser company if you haven't started using Arc yet. If you haven't learned a new language, this is your time. And then we are around and floating around, so if anyone does want to talk social media, you know, we're happy to take any questions. So, thank you.
Please welcome Akshay Kothari and Dylan Fields.
All right, afternoon hour. I'm so excited for this one. I've known Dylan for 15 years now. That's about half his life. And
sort of a portion is yours as well, my friend.
Yeah, roughly. And so excited to do this. I think we're doing this for the first time.
Yeah.
And we thought we'll just have a conversation. I think a lot of people came to us and said, what topic are you talking about? And we decided we will hang out.
Akshay, he already gave like a keynote earlier, so I figured it'd be good to be more chill.
Yes.
But also thank y'all for having me. It's good to see everybody. It's exciting.
So many fans of both Figma and Notion here. So I'm going to take it all the way back. You grew up in Sonoma County, not too far.
Nope.
Not exactly the hotbed for tech. I'd love to just learn, like, how did you get introduced to tech?
Yeah, I was super interested in computers from a young age, probably like many people here, and didn't really have a way to figure out programming. Adults in my life were amazing, nurturing, but definitely not programmers. And I think first, probably through acting a bit, got a chance to kind of engage with people that were more technical. And then eventually, as I got to sort of, later in elementary school, middle school, high school, got to do more code. Eventually got an internship at O'Reilly Media. O'Reilly Media makes the books with the animals, the woodcut animals on the covers, if you've seen those. And they threw a bunch of conferences as well. And my friend's dad was the IT guy there, amazing man, and helped me get inside that ecosystem. And from there, met a lot of people in tech, had a chance to interact with the community of technology in SF, and realized that, like, okay, founders that, you know, are like, now like the Akshays and Dylans of the world, like, those guys are cool and all, but like, they're not like that smart. You know, I could probably do that at some point. Not because I'm smarter or anything like that, just like, you know, just like, you know, I think that the probably the smartest people in our organizations are like not us.
It's funny how
maybe they are in the case of for Akshay, but definitely not for me.
It's funny how you meet someone who you looked up to, and then you hang out with them for 10 minutes, and you're like, "What? That's a normal person."
They're normal. I could do that too. Yeah. So look forward to meeting you all later. But yeah, I also, you know, had a chance to do a research assistantship at Microsoft Research with someone who actually is brilliant, Dana Boyd, and she's beyond smart. And then got to intern at LinkedIn, Flipboard. And then the first place we met was actually before all that happened, right after high school. I was itching to get out of my parents' house, and so like 2 days after I graduated from high school, I convinced some folks I'd met through one of the first, I think the first startup weekend event in SF that I'd met over a listserv, convinced them to let me live with them for a summer, and in exchange, I would do something useful for their startup. And I think, hello? Well, we cut out, oh, sorry. But I was like, I can yell. But basically, I think that I started that summer as the CFO of the startup and ended as the intern. So, you know, I challenge you to have that journey as well if you're a student in the crowd.
I still remember that internship so clearly. I feel like, so this was 2009.
Yep.
We both had a grant from a venture firm. We got office in Sand Hill Road. Dylan was you were living in Berkeley then, right?
Yeah, we were all living in Berkeley.
And I think I was in Palo Alto. I was like biking up Sand Hill.
Because you were a Stanford student, right?
I was a student then.
And you had like an exceptionally good idea.
I know, exceptionally. I wish I'd continued. So I was working on this is 2009, I was working on a texting startup. It was called Zap Text, where you don't have to type. You just click a button, like, you know, have some prefixed messages and send it. And we gave up on that idea too early. But when we look back, I think there was an option where you could actually type. And the kids were using it a lot because it was free text messaging. So if I just stayed with it, maybe we would have invented like WhatsApp.
Yeah.
That didn't work out for me, but.
Akshay was clearly amazing back then as well. And we spent a lot of time together, really not talking much about our startups or the startups we're working on, but just about like life and stuff.
That's right. I still remember, I feel like you were interning after graduating high school, and to me that was just like something that took me a while to, I don't know what I was doing after graduating high school, and here you are interning at a tech startup.
Yeah, I learned a lot, but I don't think they got much out of me, to be fair. I definitely left with more skills than I joined with, but I wish I had more to offer that summer.
You talked a little bit about the different internships you did, and one of the things I think I've picked up is that I think at each of these internships, you were noticing sort of challenges with design, and sort of like in many ways like how it was happening. Wonder if you can talk a little bit about that, like how did this sort of idea shape in your head in terms of how you improve it?
Yeah, I mean the summer that we met, the founder was working a lot in Photoshop, and then we would use basically a slicing service to make the websites from there. Fast forward to LinkedIn, I was obsessed with the designers on our team, the work they're doing for data visualization, for UI design more generally, and the UX problems that we had at LinkedIn. It was a surprisingly complex product even then, back in 2010. And then from there, the next summer, I got to work at Flipboard. And Flipboard was, at the time, like the cool, hot iPad startup. And they were taking a lot of really interesting ideas from the worlds of magazines and bringing them to digital. And trying to create what they called a social magazine, bringing in your feeds and displaying it like a magazine that you could, a characteristic gesture that was like a flip. And whether it's the animation, the dynamism of that, the full bleed images, layouts, it was just really neat to actually be exposed to these more foundational ideas around typography and design at Flipboard. And they were kind enough to have me back again after that as the design intern or product intern or something. But I sat with the design team, and again, in a situation where I entered with very few skills, but hopefully did something good while I was there. But I think the main thing I look back on in the internship is really realizing that there was a lot of problems in the design process, and that was input later for Figma.
From there, you started Figma with your co-founder, Evan. Could you talk a little bit about sort of how did you meet him, and how did you two decide to work on this specific problem?
Yeah, in backing up, there's another cool parallel. While I was at Flipboard, Akshay was making a very successful app called Pulse that he later sold to LinkedIn. So there was some cool parallel tracking there too.
2 summers when I was competing with Dylan I'm glad I don't do that anymore.
Only he was the CEO and I was the intern, to be clear. I'm also glad we're not competitors. Sorry, the question was Evan?
Evan,
yeah. I met Evan at Brown. He was my TA, and one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life still. It was immediately clear then. I worked with legendary people at Flipboard, LinkedIn, and Evan was just sort of beyond, even against the benchmarks that I had from these awesome internships. And so I really wanted a chance to work with him and learn from him.
One of the things when I remember chatting with you about Evan is that I think the word that came up was like the creative partnership you feel with him. Can you take us back to the early days? Like, I'm just curious, like, how did you all work together? How did you divide up the work? Like, what was like 2012 in Figma look like?
Yeah, I think Evan was excited that I was someone that was willing to do the non-technical stuff, but could still code. And I think maybe a week or two into the company, we realized that it was completely inefficient for me to code, because Evan was just such a multiplier of an engineer over me. I don't think 10x is a reasonable description there. It was more like 100x. And I felt a bit insecure about that at the time. But then later on, people I really respected joined the company, and I realized that they were also like insecure around Evan. That made me feel a little better. Yeah, I just did everything that was not engineering. But Evan and I would collaborate on design and product a lot too. And he had amazing thoughts on both.
You know, when I joined Notion, this was like 6 years ago, Ivan used to tell me, like, so the way we built it is like, I'm the interior designer and Simon is the architect. So I used to wonder, so what am I? Like, I might be the contractor.
I think you've had many different roles and many different hats along that journey now.
Yeah, but it's so fun too. I mean, I think the two of you also did hackathons before that, right? So you all actually had worked with each other on different projects leading up to Figma. I guess reflecting back, was there a moment or challenge that you all sort of dealt with together that really was sort of profoundly shaped your partnership with him or just the direction of Figma?
I mean, I think that over the course of a company's lifespan, there's so many things that happen that are just super intense. In the early days, yeah, absolutely. There are times where we lacked direction, or there were moments of adversity that, yeah, those are bonding moments for anyone in the room. To stare existentialism in the face, or to have a really hard situation that you just don't know how to overcome and figure it out. So, yeah, I mean, there's sort of so many times that we both were like in the room and going, fuck. And eventually that's like a very catalyzing event.
I just realized we had some photos that I completely forgot to click, so I'm just gonna go through it. This was Dylan in the early days.
Lego robotics, heck yeah.
And then this is Dylan with Evan.
And Jessica. Jessica was an amazing early engineer on our team as well.
Have you think over the years, like, one of the things I feel is like the challenges don't get any easier.
No, they get harder, I think, yeah.
But you get better at dealing with them? Like, how do you feel?
I like to think that.
You like to think that.
That's the aspirational goal, definitely. I think you're always trying to figure out how to upgrade yourself and like what are the mental models to take on. But also the world is shifting, and the problems you're solving are slightly different. It's kind of interesting. Like if you're building like a product from 0 to 1 and doing that a first time, a second time, a third time, it's kind of similar in the way that you pick up some patterns at the very least. But I think as you scale products, those challenges I think are more unique maybe. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I also feel like one of the things I admire you for is that I think you're obviously running this incredible company, Figma, but you're so well connected to, I think, to a lot of startups. In fact, like there's founders I come across and they're like, I've spent so much time with Dylan, and I always wonder, how does Dylan have so much time to spend? Because I know you have a family, you have Figma, but I think everybody feels like this deep connection. And at least as a peer, I think a lot about, well, like you probably have your company experiences, but you're also learning so much from what's happening around
Absolutely,
you.
yeah.
Different industries and different phases of the company generate. Like, how do you think about that, and how does that fit into the sort of like new, sort of like, how do you sort of update your mental models as you see this data?
Yeah, I think it's totally the case that you can learn from domains that are not your domain, and you should always be trying to learn from new things and new areas. For me, I've been very surprised. Like, I didn't intentionally do investing or advising stuff and try to help people. It was more because it just gave me energy. Like, I really like helping folks, and if I've got a way to help folks, that's really fun for me. And that's energy I can pour right into everything else in my life. And so it never feels like work. It just like Figma doesn't feel like work, or hanging out with the kids doesn't feel like work. It's like, I'm lucky that I'm in a spot in my life where everything feels very energizing. But then later on, like you're saying, it is cool that you kind of will stumble across the problem that you've never encountered before in your maybe business domain, and you've encountered it somewhere else in a parallel track. I think this is what business school is supposed to be like, with case studies and stuff, but I never went to business school, so I don't know.
One of the things I feel is that sort of operating has made me a better investor, and investing has made me a better operator.
Yeah.
It's like a nice...
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
But you do the same. I mean, you're also like highly engaged.
Yeah, I've learned a lot, and I think similar to you, I think it feels like I try to spend maybe like 1 or 2 meetings every week, because it does feel like a boost of energy. Just you meet another entrepreneur who's going through like this early 0 to 1. It's just so exciting to see like the creative process.
Totally. And there's lessons to share, which is like, man, if I could save you a month of work with like 10 minutes, that's awesome.
Yeah. So one of the ways that Figma and Notion are alike is the extraordinary communities we have. You all do this big event, Config, but I'd love to hear just like, how do you all spend time with community, or if there's a story that comes to mind?
So many. I think it was wild even before Config. We asked folks, hey, should we throw a user conference? And sort of everyone told us, no, you gotta go do like lots of user groups first and start helping user groups spin up around the world. And so I just started to travel a lot, and it was honestly the first time I'd ever traveled, really. I hadn't had the chance to do so early in my life, and so I got to see places that I'd never been before, because over 80% of our weekly active users are outside the United States. And so I would just kind of go to spots that I was curious with the usage, whether that was, anywhere from Lagos to, Europe to, went to Moscow at some point before the war. And some of these places were not like your typical spots, but I was seeing the usage spikes and going, what's going on? And trying to figure them out.
I remember you went to Lagos like very early, like 2018, 2019, right?
A little bit, yeah, probably a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, and it was, I think I learned so much about our user base by spending time with folks just around the world and getting to know them better. And also the constraints that different folks are under, whether it's, infrastructure not being the same as the United States, or perhaps actually the pricing power that they have being different, or just different industries and different cultures around procuring software or collaboration even. And so having that as part of your mental model, I think, is very important. And each of these places, like, people give us such incredible feedbacks. That was amazing to just like spend time with the community. And then now it's, we go to Config and yeah, there's a ton of people and we interact online. There's so many folks, but I think it all stems from like these core interactions people have, and I think it's also amazing when you're able to bring people together. And I think this is special about this event in particular is, you know, maybe next year they're going to do the giant version of it, but like this time it's actually quite intimate, and everyone's like in basically 2 rooms. And I hope you're all getting to know each other and spending time with each other.
I also heard a story about an early user you had who was using Figma so deeply that you had to go meet him.
I know who you're talking about. So that's a pretty good tee up. So in the earliest days of Figma, there's only a few people on our platform. Like, it was a grind at first, and the folks that really liked Figma seemed to be building cloud-based tools, or they were minimalists, you know, or they stumbled across us somehow and it's kind of random. But the 2 first categories ended up containing some interesting people. And I think in the month or 2 after launch, I did this query. I wrote it myself, so I was a little suspicious it might be wrong. And it was on about time spent. So it's like, you know, okay, this person spent an hour. It was measured by hours. So like, I think I rounded up. But they spent like 1 minute, it was an hour. You know, but you know, an hour and 1 minute was 2 hours, et cetera. And I was really concerned because there's a bunch of people that, you know, are counted as 1 hour. You know, a few that are like a few hours in the day, and there's this like outlier of 16 hours. I'm like, who is this person? This must be an error in my data. His name's Ivan. He was coding in his underwear in Japan and designing in Figma 16 hours a day, building Notion.
I love that story. Every time you say it. I think that's how you met Ivan.
Yeah, I know. I reached out. I'm like, who are you?
So I know we're coming to a close here. I think your journey with tech and design started when you were a student, and now students are a massive part of the Figma community. What do you think draws students to Figma?
Well, I think both of us have free plans for education. Good time to plug that. So hopefully some of you in the audience, if you're students, are enjoying those plans. But no, I think that across Notion, across Figma, hopefully we're both creating great canvases, great places for you to do work, but also brainstorm and think visually. And we're really trying to just make it so that with Figma, whether it's with slides, with FigJam, with Figma Design, Dev Mode, that you're able to really branch out and to be more in that design process early on. We hope it turns into a tool that you're going to use for the rest of your life. And so it's a bit selfish from our standpoint to try to empower the next generation and get them into Figma early. I'm sure you think about it both ways as well, right? Empowering, building community, but also as ways to build the business for the long term. And one thing that is kind of fun, though, is thinking really long term and trying to prioritize people that are not even in college yet. Like, how do you get folks in high school, middle school, to have great experiences on the platform? And it's really interesting, too, because these are use cases that are oftentimes more advanced than the corporate enterprise use case, which kind of makes sense, right? Like, you would expect students that are native to the tool, even if they're just in middle school, to like potentially be working in a more advanced way than, you know, your average person in the workplace. So that's been really fun to see in some of the challenge cases for that.
We see that too. I think actually like the thing that consistently we hear is sort of support for tablets.
Yes.
Support for like pencil. Is a lot of that comes from like the student community where they actually, those are the primary devices they use.
Yeah, and then for FigJam, we have like a totally different set of needs that actually relate to the needs of enterprise too.
Actually, that's an interesting one where I think it's almost like, I think of FigJam and Figma slides as like almost an easier introduction to Figma as a company, right?
Potentially. I hope that's what it is, yes.
Because I've been trying to get my daughter to use Notion for a bit, and after a while she was like, okay, I'm kind of bored now. And then she just herself discovered Keynote. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna like, she writes some poetry, and then she's like, you know, using slides. And I was like, oh, I gotta teach you like Figma slides, which just came out. Yeah. So I'll report back.
Okay. I'm happy to be tech supportive if she'd like.
Okay, one of the other things that actually connects and Dylan and I is actually we both had a strong mentor in Jeff Weiner. He was the CEO of LinkedIn. So I worked at LinkedIn for many years, and he was I think Dylan interned there, but also I think Jeff was an early investor.
He was one of our first investors, or really our first investor.
Yeah. I would love to hear, what have you learned from him?
Oh, so much. I think one of the things that he drills down to anyone that he meets, and there's a great blog post on this too, so you can do your homework if you're a student or not a student and read it later. He talks about vision, mission, values, and I think that this is super critical. Just clearly defining your vision, your mission, and also the values of the company or the initiative that you're working on. I think another thing that he always encourages is like making sure you're seeing the chessboard. That's the way he would put it. And I think that it's very easy to be myopically focused on whatever is in front of you, but to zoom out more and to understand the ecosystem that's in place, the context you're in, ends up being critical to any path of success. Last thing I'd say is I just think Jeff is incredibly values-driven, and that's always very inspirational for me because at the end of the day, if you're trying to make a hard call, if you go back to your values, that's often where the answer lies. What would you say?
I would agree. I think the thing at least as like the first startup that I did, everybody said we should do that, and so we did that, but I'm not sure if it was like, it felt like one of those things that you put on your walls or slides, but like wasn't forced. And then I worked at LinkedIn for 5 years, and one of the things I noticed was that you could really feel it. Like when he says we're creating economic opportunity for the global workforce, you're like, okay, well, I came across someone who got a new job because of LinkedIn, or I met someone who is on the board of some company because of LinkedIn. So and I think he would never miss a beat to reinforce that.
Yep.
Like I think he would do all hands every 2 weeks for like he did it for 10 years as a CEO, and just never miss a chance to talk about vision and mission, which to him is two separate things.
Mm-hmm. He's very firm on that.
Very firm on that.
At one point I was like, Jeff, I think we're going to do North Star, and he's like, oh, I got betrayed.
But then I think what you said is sort of really interesting in that he has obviously done this as a company, but he sort of brought it to his personal life too. It's almost like he has a mission for his life. He has values that he lives by. And in many ways, I think for startups, growing startups, those end up being very similar because it's like the company's values end up being like the founder's values as an extension of that.
A great way to say it.
Yeah. Maybe we have 1 more minute. Any advice for all the makers, creators, builders in the room?
Well, we were talking backstage, and you mentioned that this might be the closing question. And I was like, oh man, such a big audience, big group. Like, what could I possibly give as advice? And he's like, well, I heard you say this one thing once, and that was meta advice. So I'll give that first, and I'll give the actual advice I thought of when you asked that question. So the meta advice is, when someone gives you advice, they're not giving you advice. They're giving advice themselves in your shoes. It's a good way to process advice. And with that said, my advice is make more stuff.
On that note, thank you, Dylan. Thank you for joining us today. It's such an honor. Yeah.
Please welcome Thomas Frank.
They told me the voice of God was going to announce me. That is an honor. Seriously, I want to take just a quick second to soak this in. It's such an honor to be here. There's people in the audience that I've seen online. I get to meet people in person for the first time I've been talking to only on little Twitter avatars forever. This is amazing. So thank you all for coming. So today, the label's on the tin. I'm going to tell you how to launch a template business, kind of. But what I want to do in this talk is share some of the most important lessons that my team and I have learned, and I want to emphasize team, I did not do all this myself, that my team and I have learned selling Notion templates, specifically 2 paid templates, 2 and 2 only, that we've been selling for the past few years. We've served over 30,000 customers with these templates and driven over $2.5 million in revenue. These are one-time purchases. We don't have consulting upsells. We don't have subscriptions. These are just templates that we are selling, and I think that is such an interesting thing that has happened. I didn't have to know how to code to build this. This is software that I could build as a layperson and build a sustainable business doing it. So, I'm going to give you as much as I can in terms of lessons that we've learned selling these templates, but I want to start out with a story that's really important to me. And this is a story that goes far back in the past, before Notion was maybe even a concept in the minds of the founders. I want to go back to this kid, working in the cornfields in Iowa, where I still live. I had a little sojourn to Denver, but now I live back in Iowa. This kid was 17 years old, graduated from high school, was picking his major in college. And I ended up picking a business major. And the reason I picked a business major was not particularly because I wanted to major in business. The reason I picked a business major is because I did not pick an engineering major, even though I had more of an interest in engineering. I've always been interested in technology. I've always been interested in code, networking. I thought I wanted to be Tank from The Matrix, you know, the guy who's like in the chair with 1,000 monitors. He's got all the code coming down the screen vertically somehow. I wanted to be that guy. But when it came time to look through all the majors I could choose for college, I took the dark path and I went to business school. And the reason I did that, the reason I did not choose to major in computer engineering or electrical engineering or something I was more interested in is I thought I was too stupid for it. I genuinely thought that I would fail if I chose an engineering major. And it took me a really long time to figure out why I believed that. Because I did pretty well in school. When I started as a kid, I didn't have a whole lot of trouble with basic math, breezed through algebra, even trigonometry and geometry were fine, SOHCAHTOA, all that good stuff was no problem. And I was good enough at math that I eventually was able to get 1 year ahead in my math classes, and I got to take calculus as a senior. And that is when I hit a wall. I struggled so much with calculus. Or actually, I should say that I should have struggled, because for a couple of reasons, I did not struggle and I did not experience the formation of scar tissue, intellectual scar tissue, that I should have experienced going through that math class. Problem number one, my teacher gave out a little bit too much extra credit. Anybody here ever get extra credit? There's not a lot of hands. I'm guessing a lot of you went to schools where this wasn't even a concept. In some schools, teachers are like, hey, I'll give you some extra work and you can get extra credit. My math teacher, for some reason, was like, hey, if you say hi to me in the hallway, you'll get an extra credit point. My teacher was the basketball coach for the varsity basketball team. So let me tell you about the math class's attendance at high school basketball games, because we were all stalking our teacher. Hey, Pete, give me a point. Can I have a point? Yeah, I stalked my teacher. So I got a fairly big pile of extra credit points. And then the bigger problem is right outside our math class, there was this big common area. And we had like this round table. The knights of the round table, or the knights of the hapless calculus students, sat there doing their homework. I was there 6 a.m. every day before my assignment was due, because I procrastinated. And there was a book on this table. This was the teacher's edition of the calculus textbook, which meant it had all the answers in it. So I'd show up every morning, ready to do my calculus homework the day it was due, and I'd get stuck in a calculus problem, and instead of going through the process that we all need to go through to learn something hard, I'd just reach for the book. And I'd be like, this time, I'm gonna look at the answer, I'm gonna rush, I gotta get this done, but next assignment, for sure, I'm gonna actually go through the work and understand this. I just need the shortcut this time. There might be an analogy to AI programs and coding in there. But because of this, I never went through that process of scar tissue formation. I never had to bust through walls. And because I had the extra credit, and I had basically copied the answers out of the back of the book to get a pretty good homework grade, I kind of skated through calculus, had a decent grade, stumbled through all of the exams, but by the end of high school, my report card may have said I understood calculus, but let me tell you, I did not understand calculus. I could not find a tangent line if I had to save my life right now. So when I was picking my college major, I'm thinking back to that experience, and now I'm looking at the syllabi, which is the plural for syllabus, by the way. The syllabi is just a fun word for these engineering majors. And all these giant, intimidating classes are staring me in the face. Calculus 2, differential equations, C programming, all of this stuff that I'm like, I'm kind of interested in this, but I remember my experience from calculus, and I don't feel like I understand it. I don't think I'm smart enough for this major. I'm picking business. That's the reason I picked business. And I'm really kind of regretful that I did it that way, because in the past few years, I've learned that I absolutely could have handled that major. And I think there's probably a lot of people here who have gone through a similar experience where, for one reason or another, maybe it's lack of confidence, maybe it's just lack of ability or willingness to try in the moment at that stage of your life, we did not go through that tough process, and then we form this belief that I am not able to go and reach up to this next challenge. So we don't take on that challenge. Well, in the past few years, I've started learning how to code. And I've gone through these periods of getting stuck. If anybody here has learned to code and had to deal with recursion, you probably know that feeling. Like, what the heck is going on in this code? I don't understand this at all. You go through this period where like, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. Wait, I get it. And then next week, it's like riding a bicycle. Oh my gosh, it's so much easier. You go through that period of struggle and then of overcoming the struggle again and again, and you start to believe, yes, I can do it. So in the past couple of years, I've started learning how to code. I've built an entire JavaScript library for working with the Notion API. This has been a super fun project, but it's been really, really hard. I call this Notion Helper. Basically takes the Notion API, where you have to write this very verbose code, and builds what's called a fluent interface, where you can just kind of chain these methods. This is a really, really tough project, and I've had to go through a lot of periods of feeling just super stuck. Same thing with the browser extension that my team and I have been building for the past 2 years, Flylighter. This is a Notion web clipper, and we've had to go through all these experiences getting stuck and then breaking through these bugs. And in that experience, I've realized I could have handled that major. Now, why am I telling you about this? My college experience has nothing to do with Notion templates, right? Well, it actually does. Because if there's nothing else you take away from this talk today, I think there's only one idea, or at least the top idea, that is going to help you to either build a template business or to maybe figure out there's something else I should build and to be successful at it. It is the tenacity. It is the ability to take on a tough challenge that scares you, that intimidates you, and to work through it, and to also view your failures as feedback, not as the end of the line. I realize this isn't the tactical in-the-weeds stuff you probably want, but I really wanted to start my talk with this because I made the same mistake that I made when I was picking my college major when I was launching my first paid template. I had the same fear when I was launching my first paid template. Now, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit more insidious this time. When I was launching my first template where I was going to charge people actual money, it's not that I didn't believe I couldn't do it. If anyone here has ever clicked the little share button in Notion, we all know it's easy to share a template. That's easy. And we saw in the keynote this morning, it's even easier now. We now have Marketplace. We can take payments. They've made it as easy as can be. Now, there was this more insidious fear that I had where I thought I had to do it perfectly. And if I didn't do it perfectly the first time, I was going to lose out on all this stuff. My sales page wouldn't be optimized. I wouldn't have a good sales funnel. And I was going to have bad conversion rates. All these like business buzzwords that we're so concerned about when we're here at like level 1. It's like being really concerned about wheelie technique if you're trying to learn to ride a bike. Or like being the top Counter-Strike player in the world when you've never played a video game before. We get so concerned with this stuff, and it's due to, at least I think, this sneakier kind of fear that we have. We think, I have to get it perfect on my first try, otherwise I'm going to burn my chance. I'm never going to have another one. If I launch a bad template, if I launch a template that's good but nobody knows about it, that was my chance. Oh well, that's all I get. And that's just not true. So if you take nothing else away from this talk today, go out there, find a problem you can solve. Maybe it's with a template, maybe it's not. Launch it before you think you're ready. It could be just to a small group of friends. It could be to a subreddit that you hang out in, and get feedback as fast as you can. Once I actually launched, I started getting feedback. Of course, for a while, instead of launching, I got caught up in all that minutia. I got caught up in all the complexity, which I now realize was fueled by fear. So here I am thinking I need to listen to one more podcast by a marketing guru on which color of buttons I should have on my sales page to increase my conversion rates. Or I'm buying another WordPress plugin that's going to have like a little pop-up that says, hey, Jason from New Jersey just put this template in his sales cart. You should do it too. Bought all these WordPress plugins, and you know what I ended up doing? I got so fed up with the complexity that I was introducing into the process that I threw it all away. When I ended up finally taking payments for my first template, it's because I threw it up on Gumroad. The simplest, well, maybe not now the simplest, but back then, the simplest way to sell a digital product. And I felt so bad about this. I'm like, but there's no upsells, there's no bundles, I won't be able to get all these analytics I want. None of that. It ended up being a feature, not a bug. Because I had no more things to hyperfixate on, and I just had to launch. And once I launched, I got two things. First of all, I started to earn some money, which was pretty nice. I mean, who would have thought you email people on a wait list and actually sell them something, and you earn money? So we started earning, I think it was $13,000 in the first month, launching to an email list that we had built saying, hey, we're building this product, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's launching at some point in the future. I probably should have launched it way sooner than I did, but once we launched, we made $13,000. By the end of 2021, it was around $50,000, and then when we launched our second template, Ultimate Brain, which was our personal productivity template for note-taking and task management and all that, that made about $90,000 in the first month because we finally launched. But perhaps more importantly than earning income, we got feedback. Because now the templates were out into the hands of our users. We started getting bug reports. Hey, you spelled this wrong. Hey, you had this filter incorrectly applied on this view over here. Can you please fix it? We started getting feedback from people. And with this real-world feedback, data-driven feedback, also anecdotal feedback, listening to actual people, I was no longer able to hide behind these mental simulations of what I thought might happen once I launched. Now, I'm getting real results. Now, I can see what's happening. And with these results, I can start to tweak things. So, had an imperfect sales page, very simple. We had it up on Gumroad, very simple, but now we're getting data. Now we have a starting point where we can build things. We added testimonials. Started asking people, oh, do you like the template? Are you willing to give us a testimonial for our sales page? Awesome, those are on our sales page. Started tweaking the sales page. One thing we learned with Ultimate Brain, it's a powerful template, but it's also quite complex. So for Ultimate Brain 2.0, we added a light mode. Just a very, very simple set of views, and it turns out people almost like that better than all the complex parts of the template, so we added that to the sales page. And we also started answering support questions. I think this is actually one of the most important things you can do as a template creator, software creator, anything creator, answer support questions for your audience, help people directly do things that don't scale. That's the buzzword, or the buzz phrase, I guess, right? And this one I think is incredibly important, because if you can get actual support queries from your people that have bought from you and you can solve them, you not only make your products better, but you deepen your expertise in whatever you're building on. So if it's Notion, and I'm getting a zillion support queries from people who have different needs than I have, or maybe different interests than I have, I deepen and also broaden my expertise, which I can use to improve my products or make new products in the future. Okay, so if you came here learning, how do I launch a template? How do I build a business on a template? That is the formula. Find a problem you can solve. Build a template around it. Launch it before you think you're ready, and then iterate as fast as possible. Get feedback. And if you're paying attention, I added a little bit of pro tip magic in there. Getting testimonials can be incredibly incredibly good for your sales pages. People tend to believe what other people say about you more than what you say about yourself, and that applies to your products as well. And if you can get testimonials from, say, influential people in certain circles, or you can get testimonials from folks who are like your target customer, they're going to tend to believe those words. So ask for great feedback from your customers, and if it's positive, ask if you can use that as a testimonial. There are platforms like Senja or testimonial.to where you can actually embed these testimonials in your sales pages, or you can use Notion forms. There's a very simple way to do this, but just ask people for testimonials. Tweak your sales pages, get feedback, and ask yourself, oh, how can I change my messaging based on what I'm actually hearing from people? And of course, answer support queries. We have an almost full-time support person, Alex. He's amazing. He's answered, I think, over 5,000 tickets at this point in our support community. That has had a huge impact on the direction of our products. Okay, so that's how you launch your template, that's how you build your business, but I may have skipped over a couple of questions you have in your head. Like, what kind of template do I build in the first place, Tom? I don't know what I'm supposed to build here. Or, once I've built my template, how do I reach my customers? If I don't have a giant audience on YouTube, what am I supposed to do? Well, let's start by throwing that first question out the window. Because what sort of template should I create is not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, well, actually, I'm gonna let you guess. I'm gonna let you percolate on that for a second. I wanna tell a quick story before I give you the answer. So a few weeks ago, I went down to Los Angeles, and I went to Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain Summit. Was anybody else at that event? I see 1, 2, at least 2. Okay, so a few of the people who were there have this cool company called Ultra Speaking, and I've heard really good things about Ultra Speaking. They've basically built this program that is apparently like Duolingo, but for public speaking. I don't know if they have a cartoon owl who threatens your life on your phone's home screen and the notifications, but other than that, it's apparently like Duolingo, but for public speaking. Now, I haven't taken this course myself, but I'm following the founders now, and I saw this video on Twitter from one of them saying there's a huge mistake that public speakers often make while they're prepping their talks. You see, they have all these things they want to say. If I'm a speaker, I've got all this stuff I want to say, and I'm a technically minded person, so I really fall into this trap. How to start a template business? Oh my gosh, there's a million clever things I want to say to you, and there's like marketing and sales pages and analytics and all this stuff. I need to say it all. And if I don't say one thing correctly, they're going to notice. He said, the biggest mistake that speakers make is focusing on themselves and all these clever things they want to say. And it's a mistake because no matter how good of a speaker you are, no matter how great your content is, people are just going to remember maybe one thing, at best, from your talk. And you'll be lucky if they actually go and implement that in their lives. So instead of focusing on a million clever things you want to say, instead of focusing on being absolutely comprehensive on your topic, ask yourself, who am I talking to? What do they want? How can I help them? What's the one thing that if I were able to impart to them, what's the one gift I could give them that would really improve their lives? Maybe it's a laugh, or maybe it's something really insightful. Maybe it's the best lesson I can pull from my experience. What's that one thing? And if you can focus on that instead of what do I want to say, but how can I help you, your job gets easier. It gives you direction. And you don't have to be worried about, number one, spending way too much time over preparing and doing an encyclopedia of prep. And you also don't have to worry about memorizing every word you're going to say, because if you have a core message, it doesn't really matter how you say it. I've gone off script like 20 times in this talk. I don't even remember what my script was like before. And so that's what I should keep in mind as a speaker. How can I help you? Not what do I want to say? That is exactly what I should also keep in mind as a creator of templates, of software, browser extensions, courses. Doesn't matter what I'm creating, I need to keep in mind this simple question. Who am I talking to? What is their problem? How can I solve it? So when we're talking about this question of what template do I create to launch a template business, that's not the right question you should be asking. You don't want to build a template, you want to build a solution. But until you understand who you are serving and what their problems are, you're not going to know what kind of solution to build. So the question really is, how do I go out and discover what kind of problem I can solve? And there are, of course, all sorts of consultancies you could go and hire. I'm sure I could call up, oh boy, I'm brain farting right now. Who's that really, really, really big wig consulting house? McKinsey. I was going to ask you to tell me the word McKinsey, but actually I thought about it, so thank you for cueing me, Josh. You could ask McKinsey, what are the trending problems that business owners are dealing with today? What could I solve for them? Or you could go on Google Trends, or you could ask ChatGPT, give me 27 business ideas. I'll go and make a YouTube video about it first, and then I'll take the best one. Or you could ask either yourself or a community that you're deeply involved in, what's a pain point in my life? Given the work I do, what's something that really, really bugs me right now? Or what's something I really, really wish that I could do? Going away from templates, one of the things that is a problem in my life is I have way too many ideas. And I also get way too excited when I come across really cool blog posts or SaaS apps or tools. If you saw my browser tabs, you would not be able to read even the first letter of those browser tabs. I have a tab addiction problem, and that's because I get way too excited about these things that I find. I also get way too many ideas when I'm in the shower or driving or fighting bears in the woods, which I definitely do, and I win every single time. And I want to dump those ideas. So can I build a Notion template to solve that problem? No. But I can build a browser extension to solve that problem. I can partner up with a really talented developer who builds this really cool highlighting engine, and then we could pair that maybe with a template, but I have to understand the problem first. So, first, understand the problem, and do that by either querying your own needs or getting involved in a community and figuring out theirs. Another little story. I never intended to make a paid Notion template. That wasn't my intention. I started using Notion in 2018 because I was a YouTube creator who also had multiple blogs and multiple podcasts. We're juggling all these podcasts, YouTube channels, blogs. Whoops, I dropped the ball there because I'm using Evernote over here, and I'm using Todoist over here, but we also have a whiteboard over there, and my shot list is on this notebook because I came up with this crazy system of stars and symbols. It's not working. Oh, wow, I found Notion. And in Notion, I built this all-in-one system for capturing my video ideas, for having different channels, for writing my scripts, capturing research, for having my shot lists well organized as a YouTube creator who likes to do lots of animations and things like that. I built this for myself. But then, when I had built my Notion YouTube channel, I'm thinking, how do I monetize this? Maybe I'll make a course, because I want to help creators, and I think there's a lot of creators out there who have the same problem I have. They got all these different properties they're juggling. Maybe I can teach them what my team and I have been able to figure out in building this system. So, in possibly the most meta thing I've ever done, I signed up for a course that teaches course creators how to make courses. It truly is turtles all the way down, my friends. And this was a great course. Take a shot every time you hear the word course here. Don't do that. That's dangerous. But as I'm going through this, about 3 weeks into the process, I realized what I want to create isn't a course. I think I can help other creators who are juggling all these different properties just by giving them access to the tool that my team and I built. So we built Creator's Companion as a product that was born out of our solution and wanting to give that solution to other people. And I have to tell you, at the time, selling a Notion template wasn't like a lucrative business model. This wasn't something that I was like, oh wait, I'm gonna make way more money doing this than selling a course. This was 2021. People were printing money on cohort-based courses. You launch a cohort in 2021 when everyone's locked in their houses, millionaire overnight. Notion templates? I remember going into the Notion subreddit and everyone was like, why would you ever buy a Notion template? You dumb. You can just build it yourself. Why would you ever buy one? It was disrespectful. Some people were a little bit more polite. Maybe I would pay $5 for a Notion template. So this wasn't a lucrative business model at the time. But what I saw was my frustration and a solution that we had built that solved it. And I realized, we're a media company. We have multiple channels. We have podcasts. We have blogs. We have advertising partners. This is a business. And what I've created here, even though I didn't write a lick of code for it, other than maybe a couple of formulas, is software. And it's software that does not exist elsewhere in the market. It's also software that doesn't exist out of the box when you install Notion. We built it from scratch. So I had this conviction. I had this conviction that I would be able to serve other creators who were like me, and they would find it more valuable than $5. So we decided to make it $150, and people started buying. Now, I wasn't guaranteed to be right about that, but I believe when you feel conviction about a solution, either because it has served you and you've seen the value firsthand, or because you've already served your community, maybe for free, maybe with an MVP, minimum viable product, that gives you better data on how you can price and how far you can go than just trying to read blog posts about how I should price things or listening to nerds like me on stage. Listen to your heart, my friends. Okay, lightning round. The last question we have here is, how do I get that distribution? How do I actually connect with my future customers? I have two heavy-handed metaphors because I like coming up with these. Number one is to create lighthouses. Imagine your future customers as ships that are sailing the dark waters of the internet, or the even darker waters of maybe a real-life ocean. I don't know, there's one right there. Maybe your customers are out there. If you can light a lighthouse, which is, again, a heavy-handed, fun metaphor for creating content, you create a beacon in the dark that can help guide them to shore. Every time you create YouTube videos, live streams, podcasts, tweets, LinkedIn cringe, you're creating lighthouses. And you can create different kinds of lighthouses strategically. So I've created, and this is my main strategy for bringing in customers, a YouTube channel called Thomas Frank Explains. I had a whole bunch of really, really clever names, but could never get the domain for any of them, so just generic Thomas Frank Explains instead. But this is a channel that is dedicated to helping people learn Notion. And this is the primary way we bring people into my website and where they learn about my templates. We also, and I'm going to throw this in here off the cuff, we don't have a crazy sales funnel. We don't go, get on my email list, and then go through a 27-step autoresponder sequence like a lot of people tell you have to. Most of the time, we just say, hey, we have templates. If you need a template for your notes, tasks, project management, goal tracking, all that in one Ultimate Brain, here you go. People buy it more often through that than any sort of crazy funnel. And I've learned that from other very successful entrepreneurs on YouTube as well. I think there's this very interesting thing where when somebody finds you on YouTube, they're already halfway to wanting the solution that you have, so don't hesitate to give it to them. But we have content pillars, different kinds of lighthouses, like Notion feature coverage, like these very in-depth build guides, how to build a habit tracker. We have these more edutainment, lunchtime videos, 10 beginner mistakes that you're probably making in Notion. And then we have really, really in-depth, like this API, 2-hour-long tutorial. And by covering all these different types of lighthouses, you might call them content pillars, you meet your audience where they are. 30 seconds left. I really want to talk about Zapier. Go study them because they do something even smarter than what we've done. So everyone knows here, Zapier lets you connect APIs together. But with their content, all they ever cover is best calendar apps, best CRM apps, all that kind of stuff. Why? Because they're casting a wider net than their immediate target audience for their product. But in doing so, they get all these people who are interested in tools and tool creation, and some of those will go, whoa, I need to connect Excel to Gmail or whatever, and they buy the product. So, I've run out of time. My last bit of the presentation was going to be called Search Parties. That's very simple. Go connect with your community, talk with people, get from their mouths directly to your ears what their problems are, and go build that solution. Thank you so much for coming. We don't have time for questions. Anyone who has any questions or wants to hang out down in the community stage on floor 1, I'm going to be down there as long as I need to. Come hang out. Thank you.